Good noon, everyone. We now start the session, the event. Thanks for coming, everyone. This whole event is talking about biodiversity and renewable energy. I won't repeat the title here because I think several speakers will emphasize again and again. But we try to figure out how different stakeholders, especially NGOs, civil society organization, academic group, can work together to make sure the renewable energy development won't have the trade-off from the biodiversity, and it should be together between the renewable energy and the biodiversity, have a joint pathway to support the whole global nature positive. So to say so, I would be very happy, honored to invite Dr. Zhang Lihong. She is the Executive Director of the Center for Biodiversity and the Nature Reserve, and also the Director of Science and Technology Division of the Chinese Academy of Environment Planning. Now it's your floor, Dr. Zhang, for your opening remarks.
各位嘉宾，女士们、先生们，中午好。今天很高兴参加 COP16 中国角举办的可再生能源与生物多样性协同发展活动。在此，我代表生态环境部环境规划院，对各位嘉宾和朋友的到来表示最热烈的欢迎和诚挚的感谢。感谢大家对可再生能源与生物多样性协同发展的关注与支持。
It is a great pleasure to attend the Synergize Biodiversity and Climate Targets in Renewable Energy Development for Global Nature Positive event at the CBD COP16 China Pavilion. On behalf of the Ministry of Ecology and Environment of China and the Chinese Academy of Environmental Planning, I would like to extend my warmest welcome and sincere thanks to all the guests and participants. I would like to thank you all for attending and support to the symposium.
当前，我们正处于一个关键的历史时期，气候变化、生物多样性丧失、污染等全球环境问题日益严重，迫使我们寻找新的发展路径。可再生能源作为清洁、绿色的能源方式，已成为各国推动可持续发展的重要选择。然而，随着可再生能源产业的快速发展，如何在开发利用可再生能源的同时，避免对生物多样性和自然生态系统造成的新的这种破坏，成为我们亟待解决新的课题。对此，我想结合我们环境规划院的专业领域和规划工作，分享以下几点看法。
Currently, we are in a critical moment as global crisis of climate change, biodiversity loss and pollutions are amplifying and accelerating. We have to look for new development pathways. Renewable energy, as clean and green energy sources, has become a key solution to promote sustainable development globally. However, with the acceleration of renewable energy development, how to avoid its impacts on biodiversity and natural ecosystems has become a critical issue that we need to address urgently. In this regard, I would like to share the following views in the context of Chinese Academy of Environmental Planning's area of expertise and experience in planning.
首先，我们必须树立系统的思维，将可再生能源与生物多样性的协调发展纳入发展规划中。环境规划院作为生态环境部主要的决策技术支撑单位，通过科学的规划和评估，确定合理的开发利用区域。不碰这儿是吗？避免对生态敏感区和关键物种栖息地造成破坏，同时加强环境影响评估和监测，促进可再生能源项目在全生命周期内的生态环境影响最小化。
Firstly, we must establish system thinking and incorporate the coordination of renewable energy and biodiversity into development planning. As the main technical supporting unit for management of decision-making of the Ministry of Ecology and Environment of China, the Chinese Academy of Environmental Planning identifies suitable areas for development and utilization through scientific planning and assessment, avoiding disturbing ecological sensitive areas and habitats of key species. At the same time, we should strengthen environmental impact assessment and monitoring to minimize the ecological and the environmental impacts of renewable energy projects through their life cycles.
其次，我们要加强技术和管理手段的创新和应用。环境规划院利用先进的科学技术，如遥感监测、生态修复技术等，提高对生态环境影响的预测和应对能力，同时推动可再生能源项目的绿色选址和全生命周期，逐步达成生物多样性净零损失乃至净增长，贡献于昆明蒙特利尔全球框架目标的达成。
Secondly, the innovation and application of technology and management tools should be strengthened. The Chinese Academy of Environmental Planning uses advanced science and technology, such as remote sensing, monitoring, and ecological restoration technology, to improve its ability to predict and respond to ecological impacts. Also, we should promote the site selection and life cycle of renewable energy projects to gradually reach no net biodiversity loss and even net gain, contributing to the achievement of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework.
第三，强化政策法规的引导和监管作用。环境规划院协助各级政府制定和完善相关法律法规和标准，严格审批和监管可再生能源项目，确保其符合我国生态环境保护的各项规章制度。同时，通过开发生态导向发展 EOD 项目模式，激励企业和社会各界参与生态保护，推进生态环保投融资，倡导发展和保护的协同。
Third, it is important to strengthen the guiding and regulatory rule of policies and regulations. The Chinese Academy of Environmental Planning assists government at various levels in formulating and improving relevant laws, regulations, and standards, which strictly approves and supervises renewable energy projects to ensure that they comply with China's ecological protection regulations. At the same time, through the development of project mechanisms such as eco-environmental oriented development, so-called EOD, it incentivizes the participation of enterprises and all sectors of society in ecological protection, and promotes green development and financing and the synergy between development and biodiversity conservation.
最后，我强调的是，国际合作在这个过程中不可或缺。环境规划院一直以来积极开展国际间的交流与合作，分享经验。在可再生能源与生物多样性协调发展这个议题上，我们也希望搭建交流平台，进行多方合作，共同应对全球环境挑战。
Finally, I would like to stress that international cooperation is indispensable in this process. The Chinese Academy of Environmental Planning has always been active in international exchanges and cooperation, as well as in experience sharing. On the issues of the coordinated development of renewable energy and biodiversity, we also hope to build a platform for exchange and cooperation so as to jointly address the global environmental challenges.
各位朋友，生态文明建设是一项系统工程，需要我们在座的每一位共同努力。各位朋友，我们携手并肩，勇于探索，积极行动，为实现可再生能源与生物多样性的协调发展，为守护地球母亲而不懈奋斗。谢谢大家。
Ladies and gentlemen, the building of ecological civilization is a systematic project that requires the joint efforts of everyone here. Let us join hands, explore body, and act positively in order to achieve the coordinated development of renewable energy and biodiversity, and to fight for the protection of Mother Earth. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot for Dr. Zhang Lirong's very inspiring opening remark. And now we go to the next session about the keynotes. And first, our guest speaker will be Mulhall, who is the head of biodiversity and business engagement of Birdlife International. And because to save some of the time, I want to do the introduction of every guest buyers. I will just ask the guest to do the introduction of themselves very quickly. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much. As just said, I'm Sue Mulhall, Head of Biodiversity and Business Engagement for Birdlife International. So it's about, collaborating with the industry. So I'm nowhere near as smart as our scientists that unfortunately are not here, but I'll try and do my best. Okay. No, wrong way. Okay, that's not a good start. Yep. Okay, so first of all, thank you very much for the kind introduction to join today. I'll be talking about the biodiversity risks, impacts, and the critical importance of sensitivity mapping. Okay, so Birdlife, clearly we care about the birds, but don't worry, we want to collaborate with the sector to transition rapidly from this to this. However, climate mitigation and renewable energy only works with and not against nature conservation. But fortunately, that's the relevance of Target 14, and why we're all here today for the CBD. So integrate biodiversity into decision-making at every level. So how can we effectively do this? So first of all, a quick introduction to Birdlife International. So Birdlife International, we're the secretariat for 123 nature conservation organisations in 119 countries. So we've got boots on the ground. Here in Colombia, Calidris is Birdlife. In the UK, it's RSPB, or let's say in Japan, it's the Wild Bird Society of Japan. And so those 123 partners have identified and continue to identify key biodiversity areas, and that's across 26 million square kilometres land and sea. Okay, and then they monitor the state, pressure and response of all of those. And then what we do is we integrate that into IBAT, the Integrated Biodiversity Assessment Tool, along with the IUCN Red List, the World Database of Protected Areas. And so that's the most authoritative, scientifically robust biodiversity data. So we've got a very clear idea of the state of nature at a site level. Okay, so what are some of the biodiversity impacts for energy and infrastructure development that we need to inform the decision making? Okay, so first of all, renewable energy, it's actually quite space intensive, and particularly when you add in the infrastructure. So in case you can't see it, this little thing at the top is just the land area required to power a TV. Okay. And it also requires a lot more power lines. Already, the power lines stretch from the moon to back 169 times, and we're going to have to double that. And then also to achieve net zero, we're going to have to do a quadrupling of wind and solar expansion over the next decade. But that's not a problem, as long as there's plenty of land available for meet the right resource potential needs, and that can be nature safe siting as well. So again, if we consider all of those biodiversity impacts, we do the nature safe siting, this is not a problem. So the starting point is, we really need to apply the mitigation conservation hierarchy. If you're not aware of this IUCN-led report, which has been supported by probably many of us in this room, I strongly recommend you have a look. And later this year, there's going to be another 4 series in the report as well. So again, brilliant to help inform Target 14. But just really briefly, the potential impacts just at a landscape level for solar. Okay, there's 12 of them, and I'm going to need my glasses. They can range from, for example, loss of habitat through clearance of displacement of land, habitat degradation due to changes in hydrology and water availability and quality, and introduction of alien species. So that's just a few. Oops, wrong way. Okay, and so for onshore wind, again, there's at least 9 biodiversity impacts that need to be taken into consideration at a landscape level. So, the bird collisions with the turbines and transmission lines, barrier effects to animal movement from closely spaced turbines, roads and transmission lines, and then, of course, associated eco-service system impacts, just to name 3. So then we get to offshore. Of course, we've got the onshore issues. And there's 14, and these are key impacts. And so there's seabed, habitat loss, degradation and transformation, barrier effects or displacement effects. We've also got behavioural effects associated with the electromagnetic fields of the subsea cables, and pollution, so whether it's dust, light, solid, liquid, waste. So, we need to look at it at that landscape level, which we care about. But we also deeply care about the birds. And now the birds worked out the windiest routes long before renewable energy was even conceived. We've got 8 major flyways across the world. Everyone loves to think it's okay, the birds will just fly around. Not all do, and even if they do, there's still other issues to be taken into consideration. So first of all, vision is a significant issue for birds of prey. Okay, and vultures, of vulture species, there's 22, 14 are already globally threatened with extinction. They're long-living, slow-breeding birds, so we start taking a few of them out of the population, we've really got a crisis. But they're also nature's cleanup crew, so it's not just them being birds, but it's their contribution to the ecosystem. They play a crucial role in maintaining ecosystem services such as nutrient recycling, removal of soil and water contaminants. They play a significant role. Another key issue is the wing loading. So, that's the ratio of the weight to wing area. And so they've got slow manoeuvrability, and so it is difficult for them to take that evasive action at the last minute, a bit like a tanker trying to do a turnaround. But, okay, some birds, less of an issue, they may fly around, but there's still the displacement and barrier effects. So, first of all, just because of, the wind turbines, some might be going right around, but then they might get stuck inside. Whoops. Yeah. And so, therefore, there's collision. But even if they're going around, then they're displaced, and so that's from their favourite habitat or breeding, feeding areas, and can prevent their migration movements. Yep. And then just 2 quick examples. In Mongolia, badly designed power lines results in electrocution. In India, the Great Indian Bustard may even go extinct due to poorly sited renewable energy. So therefore, how to reconcile the need of renewable energy with nature? We've created AviStep, the Avian Sensitivity Mapping Tool for energy planning. It's online, it's free, but I'm just going to give you a quick offline demo because I wasn't sure about the Wi-Fi. Okay, so we've currently got 8 countries in there. Australia will be there next year, and we've got another pipeline of another 6 countries. So choose a country, and then with each of those countries, you can choose your resource potential. So onshore, offshore, solar, transmission lines, distribution lines. Okay, so let's say in India, choosing onshore wind, you flick it so that you're only looking at the appropriate wind energy areas. And then that'll give you the heat mapping of, low to high sensitivity. But then you can zoom in to a 5 by 5K grid, okay, to find out what the sensitivity score is. So this, first of all, is showing you the land score. So in this 5 by 5K grid, 51% is still forest. Then we go on to the sensitive species. And so again, this is what we know on that 5 by 5K grid of those species. So let's say with this vulture, it's 100% sensitivity, and that's because of what its status on the IUCN red list will be. And we're medium confidence of the occurrence within that 5 by 5K grid. But clearly you can see, well, just go a couple of kilometres to the right and lower sensitivity and it's fine. So very, in a nutshell, that's every step, and you can have a look. But just to say that, you know, there's those 8 flyways of the world. So what you're possibly most interested in is the East Asian Australasian flyway, so where they travel from Arctic Russia down to New Zealand and back again. Due to habitat loss, that is the most perilous flyway in the world. So one more initiative that we have, it's called the Regional Flyway Initiative, and it's with the Asian Development Bank, where we're looking to inject $3 billion in blended finance over the next 10 years. We've identified 10 countries along that flyway and 50 sites of high importance, and that $3 billion will be invested in sustainable agriculture, ecotourism, climate resilience. That's it, and on time.
Thanks a lot, Sue, for the beginning to give us a bigger picture. Use bird as a flagship species and one of the species group that has been impacted by renewables energy a lot. And it's exciting to see the tools, the mega data tools, and also the big money now come toward that. It's quite exciting. To say so, I would like to move to the second key speaker, who is Dr. Madhu. She is the chair of the World Commission on Protected Area of the IUCN. Madhu, it's your floor.
Thank you very much for inviting me to make an intervention at this really important event. I don't have slides, so I'm just going to speak. So the twin global challenges of climate change and biodiversity loss have to be tackled in a coordinated manner, and the need for synergistic action is quite evident, including in several decisions of the UNFCCC, which calls for synergistic and/or integrated climate and biodiversity action, including most recently at the COP28, where there was recognition of the importance of the integrity of ecosystems. The IPCC IPBES report from 2021 recognized that there will be a number of negative interactions or risks between biodiversity and climate measures, meaning that there is an expectation that all forms of renewable energy is likely to have an impact on biodiversity. And coming closer to the context, the current context, which is the CBD, Target 8 calls for not just minimizing the impact of climate change and ocean acidification on biodiversity, but also speaks to minimizing negative and fostering positive impacts of climate action on biodiversity. So the current status, I think, is quite evident by a number of examples given by the previous speaker. It is obvious that the rapid transition to low-carbon energy sources such as wind and solar power is going to go ahead, but it cannot come at a cost to biodiversity. But unfortunately, there is evidence throughout the world that renewable energy projects are being put in places that damage species and ecosystems, and in countries, they are also being sited within the boundaries of legally protected areas. An important area of overlap between the CBD and the UNFCCC is their dependence on retaining and recovering the ecological integrity of ecosystems, which in turn is dependent on retaining and recovering biodiversity. Now, protected and conserved areas are important natural solutions to biodiversity and climate crisis, not just to ensure that we're securing biodiversity and restoring biodiversity in these areas, but also for climate mitigation and adaptation. Now, it is clear that protected and conserved areas need to be off limits for renewable energy expansion, especially areas which have high biodiversity value. because these protected and conserved areas have been established with a mandate and intent to conserve biodiversity. So moving quickly on to the solutions, I will refer to IUCN's position on this, which is IUCN's position for moving into the COP29 in a couple of weeks on this issue is that we urge parties to ensure the highest levels of environmental and ecosystem integrity in the operationalization of Article 6 of the Paris Agreement and to maintain strong ecological and social safeguards, particularly in the use of any nature-based sinks and removals, including to prevent any adverse impacts on the stability of ecosystem-based carbon reservoirs. So there is growing attention on this topic, and IUCN has a clear position on this. In terms of solutions, again, moving forward, I think we've talked about it, but broadly, mainstreaming biodiversity into power sector planning, spatial planning at a minimum, we need to avoid locations of threatened significant species and places and ensure effective integrated planning, spatial planning occurs. So to this context, the IUCN World Commission on Protected Areas has just launched a new issues paper on participatory integrated biodiversity inclusive spatial planning, which really is the first step where you get a chance for companies to consider biodiversity early in the planning process and greatly reduce risks to biodiversity posed by renewable energy projects. The second type of solution is creation of renewable energy zones, which are designated based on biodiversity considerations. And this would help place these zones in either degraded areas or low-risk areas to biodiversity. And to this end, IUCN also has the integrated biodiversity assessment tool, which is the IBAT, which many of you may have access to, where this is an online tool which helps businesses avoid areas of biodiversity importance, such as key biodiversity areas for energy infrastructure. And of course, all of us are aware of the TNFD, which is a market-led, science-based, government-supported global initiative, calling for more transparency in the biodiversity risk associated with businesses. And finally, in terms of policy coherence, I think it is critical that at national scales, a lot of this is happening, which is energy infrastructure in high biodiversity values areas is because of lack of coordination across ministries and levels of government. So it is critically important for us to look at policy coherence at the national scale. And a very, very important need is for a collective voice based on knowledge and lessons learned by civil society organizations. I think there is an important role for civil society organizations in this dialogue, and we need to create mechanisms by which there is an exchange of lessons learned. In summary, I just want to say that renewable energy contributes substantially to climate change mitigation, but its expansion can have trade-offs with biodiversity. And it's really important that we address those trade-offs and be clear on what are acceptable trade-offs and what are not acceptable trade-offs. And these trade-offs could be reduced by building a strong evidence-based, rationalizing the selection of sites for renewable energy installations. Tools are in place. Challenges appear to be, we've just heard another fantastic tool by Birdlife for birds. But the challenge appears to be regulation and compliance. At least for climate change, there needs to be some legal context for controlling pollution resulting from renewable energy transition. And it's not clear whether the UNFCCC actually has any agenda items that are related to this. But just to end that, civil society organizations play a hugely important role bridging the gap both between science and application and helping businesses understand how they can expand on their renewable energy without impacting biodiversity. Thank you.
Thanks, Madhu. Thanks a lot. I think Madhu has, from the policy level, to especially look into the Paris Agreement to highlight it already have something about biodiversity and climate, and it's more important to make the biodiversity and the climate target together and emphasis again and again. And also very great to emphasize again the NGOs' roles and the engagement. And for this, I want to invite our Professor Lu Zhi, the third keynote speaker. She will actually respond to the other two keynote speakers and talking about how the NGOs have a potential mechanism or way to work together further.
Hi. Thank you, Ailey. I'm a professor from Peking University. In the meantime, I was founder of Shan Shui Conservation Center, the host of today's session. My nice picture. Actually, this is a picture taken by in southern Tibet, river that will have a big hydropower program. Very relevant to today's topic. Well, taking this opportunity, I would like to speak on behalf of organizers of this meeting on the proposal. A proposal on collaborative network for biodiversity net gain in renewable energy development. As we all know that climate change and biodiversity loss are two top global challenges threatening human society's sustainability. Renewable energy is considered a key climate solution to keep the rise in global temperatures below 2 degrees centigrade. In COP28, parties agreed to triple renewable power to double energy efficiency by 2030. Such acceleration of renewable energy development requires careful planning and management to avoid the potential harm to biodiversity, as previous speakers have just mentioned. And there is a growing evidence based on scientific researches indicates that renewable energy pathways, for i.e. wind, solar, hydropower, bioenergy, and ocean energy, can have significant negative impacts on biodiversity by affecting species survival and movements, as well as disturbing ecosystem processes. This side event aims to encourage actions that address this issue by sharing more evidence and concerns. As the previous keynote speakers have highlighted, climate change and biodiversity loss must be tackled more proactively. Biodiversity should not be sacrificed as a trade-off for renewable energy development. Under the CBD, Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, several targets are relevant to this subject. For instance, Target 8 aims to minimize the impact of climate change. Target 1, 14, and 15 all raise the needs for government and businesses to consider biodiversity in development decisions, so there's no net loss of biodiversity. More and more organizations and individuals, including business sectors, recognize the importance of addressing the biodiversity impacts of renewable energy development. while research practices and lessons learned are available, concerned stakeholders need to access and share such resources easily and reach consensus. This need was identified during interactions with counterparts, including civil society organizations, non-governmental organizations, and companies and investors. Seizing the opportunity presented by this event at COP16, we propose establishing a network for sharing knowledge, information, experiences, and real-time practices. This network aims to foster collective wisdom and voices, promoting a net gain in biodiversity during renewable energy development worldwide. It will encompass the full life cycle of renewable energy development, from infrastructure and operations to supply chain management. This network has the potential to nurture joint action and should be inclusive, independent, and evidence-based to provide robust support for policies at national, regional, and global levels. We, Shan Shui Conservation Center, Wildlife Conservation Society, and Friends of Nature are committed to initiating the network and hereby call for collaboration from NGOs, academic groups, companies, investors, donors, individuals, and more. Your participation and support are essential in seeking the synergy between renewable energy development and biodiversity conservation. That's the proposal, and welcome to join. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Professor Liu. China is one of the leading kind of renewable energy development in the country. So it's great to see the domestic NGO like Shan Shui willing to call for more collaboration, knowledge sharing, and the hope that more and more people, especially we invite the participants here to follow up with us, with Shan Shui, to discuss further what action we can do in the next few years to really address these issues together. Then we will go to the next session, which is looking to the impact of renewable energy from the infrastructure operation side. And we have several speakers here. The first speaker is from the Nature Conservancy, Ms. Liu Jing. She is the Land Protector Strategy Deputy Director of the TNC. Liu Jing, please, it's your floor.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Liu Jing from the Nature Conservancy. I'm now working with Nature Conservancy, but before that, I work with IUCN. I'm currently an IUCN WCPA member and also the Eagle member of the IUCN Green List. So for people who know me, probably would ask why you're here. You're not working with renewable energy. Well, I'm not. I'm actually here on behalf of my colleague back at China. She is Miss Luo Yongmei. She is not available now at COP16, so I'm here on behalf of her to introduce some of our work and some important tools that TNC developed to promote the renewable energy transit. I probably won't go over to introduce TNC because I already saw a lot of familiar faces. Probably you already know that TNC is one of the biggest environmental protection networks in the world. We operate in more than 70 countries worldwide with 900 scientists work on the most urgent topics worldwide. For now, we, as a human being, we are facing a lot of global crises. Two of them are biodiversity loss and climate change. And if you could take a closer look, there are overlaps on these two crises. And sometimes we could find clues that climate change actually become the main driver of biodiversity loss in a society. Here at TNC, we actually have three pathways to tackle the climate crisis. One is renewable energy transition, and another one is the second one is a natural climate solution, and the third is climate adaptation. As a natural conservation organizations, you might wonder why TNC work on renewable energy. I couldn't see why we shouldn't work on renewable energy. Consider that 70% of the emissions are now come from fossil fuels, and if we wouldn't take bold and fast actions, there is no way for us to really halt the biodiversity loss and really adapt to climate change. And as the Paris Agreement already defined, that we have to work together to make sure that the temperature are controlled below 1.5 Celsius. So beside of this kind of pressure, there are actually co-benefits that could bring to Nature Conservancy by clean energy. For example, it helps to reduce pollutions, air and water pollutions, and improve human health, and reduce energy cost, and also support local economic benefits and create different kind of jobs. However, during this process, we're also facing a lot of challenges. The most important challenges that TNC recognize is the wind and solar energies require a lot of land. For example, in China, if we want to achieve the carbon peak and carbon neutrality by 2060, we need to spare a land that's big enough as a Gansu province to develop renewable energy, to build out different renewable energy constructions. And also, whenever it refers to land, no matter it's in climate change field or about the diversity loss field, there will be potential conflict with local communities, with society development, and also land use. That's why we think it is essential for us to for TNC to act quickly and provide very important tools for different area of the world to recognize where we should build these places and how we could control the potential risks that renewable energy could bring to society. And the good news is we actually have a lot of renewable energy ready to use. Scientists carry out in TNC, making sure that we could actually meet the Paris Agreement 17 times over on this land, and all of the 10 highest emitting countries, including the US, has more than enough low impact areas that could do this build out of renewable energies. Before I introduce several very important tools that developed by TNC, I would like to emphasize that there are three principles that would like to draw your attention to whenever we're talking about renewable energy build out. First is climate, second is conservation, and the third is community. In order for us to go smart and go fast, we have to optimize carbon impact and avoid impacts to critical biodiversity values, and also support an equitable transition and the social economic benefits. The first tools I would like to introduce to you is the Site Renewable Right tools. These tools is actually developed by TNC and partner organizations, and to reveal where is the best places in US to build renewable energy site. you could see from the top left that there are several indicators that considered by this tool. Either it's endangered species or species should be taken into consideration whenever we want to build a renewable energy, and also its habitat and its threats. The threats that to the habitats if we want to build these kind of infrastructures or carry out constructions. Given these conditions, there are also a green green print actually. It indicates where the most most appropriate site to build these kind of infrastructures. So whenever you are a developer or you are organizations that work on renewable energies, it's okay for you to use this tool to locate or to evaluate if this kind of project is appropriate or what kind of things that you have to consider if you want to do this kind of project. And more proactively, if you are going to carry out a renewable energy factory or whatever it is, there is a tool called Mining the Sun. It actually combines all the right places where you could actually consider to do renewable energy. For example, the landfill places, the brownfield, and also some mining areas. These kind of areas could avoid or could minimize the biodiversity impact caused by renewable energy things. And similarly, we have the same things in India called site right. We could consider different threats to or potential threat that renewable energy site could bring to the local biodiversity conservation. And also we could actually input what kind of infrastructures that we want to build and try to locate where are the best places in India. And here's a short video indicate TNC's collaboration with Microsoft. Only 1 minute. Global Renewable Watch is one of its kind that we work with Microsoft to provide, to use artificial intelligence to locate where is the condition of renewable energy transit and the build out, to make sure that everyone share the same data and to make sure that this kind of transparency and equitable is guaranteed. And also in China, as Dr. Ra just mentioned, that it's very important for us to do some policy work, actually. So this is similar in China. We first found out where are the most important biodiversity value lies and where is the best place to develop this renewable energy can. And also a set of indicators that we work with our government partners to make sure that people knows what kind of things should do and what kind of things is encouraged in order to build a very good renewable energy site. And also, we would like to help China partners to make sure that whenever we want to achieve, by 2016, we want to achieve a carbon net zero, there is a lot of potential for us to work together, and there is a lot for us to work together so that all the renewable energy opportunities could be used very right in future. Thank you so much. That's my share.
Thanks a lot for Liu Jing sharing about TNC's work, especially two key message. One is the spatial planning, which also Dr. Madhu mentioned. It's very clear there's land that can be used without impact high biodiversity area, and there's tools available to look into this. It's more important is we really use those tools and the action to move forward those things. And then I will very happy to invite the next speaker, Dr. Wafa Misra. If I pronounce wrong, please forgive me. She is the campaigns and policy leader and also Climate Action Network for Africa. It's your floor.
Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you for the invitation. I am Wafa Misra. I am based in Morocco, and I am the Campaigns and Policy Officer for CAN Africa. CAN is the Climate Action Network, and I am also the Policy Fellow for this year with AWF, African Wildlife Foundation. So, before I start my presentation, I will just say that mitigation is one of the solutions, actually, for the climate change, and of course, biodiversity loss. And they are interlinked somehow, and we've seen that all the speakers before mentioned that if we're not trying to solve the problematic of climate change, we're not going to solve the biodiversity loss. So why is it important to have renewables in Africa? So most of the African countries actually are living in energy poverty with more than 600 million. And this is really a very sad position to be in, especially considering the biggest potential that Africa has. And for instance, I will just give some numbers, because Africa holds 40% of world minerals, 60% of the global solar potential. And our renewable energy potential surpasses its 2040 electricity demand by over 1,000 times, which is massive. So not only we can, cover our continent, but also covering Europe and Asia. So for that, in CAN Africa, we have like a campaign that we've launched last year at COP28 that is called 100 Renewables for Africa now. And this campaign is coming from the Africa Energy Renaissance Conference that was held last year, ahead of the Africa Climate Week and Africa Climate Summit that was held under the UNFCCC framework in Nairobi. And that was highlighting that Africa has a massive renewable energy potential that is supposed to be used in a very positive and clear way. We are also aligning our campaign with the African Union to reach 100 renewables by 2050. Probably 2050 is going to be, kind of a long-term goal, but with the debt situation that African countries are suffering from, with the technology transfer that we are not allowed to have for now at least, 2050 is the most and suitable goal to achieve 100 renewables. Also, there is the famous, I don't know if you've heard about it, the Kick Total Out of Africa, that it is highlighting the rapid phase out of fossil fuels activities and projects and initiatives within the continent, and we are aligning our initiatives also with this campaign. So who's running the campaign? Of course, it's a CAN Africa-led campaign in collaboration with the different African civil society organizations that we are so grateful and thanking them for their support and collaboration. And in case actually you are not, you don't know CAN, so CAN is the largest network of civil society organizations that are working on climate justice, social justice, and of course climate change. And just to go briefly to our goal is to reach 100 renewables in Africa by 2050. That's something that we are trying, we are hopeful to achieve with different objectives. Like the first one is to promote renewables and energy efficiency for Africa's sustainable future. And in Dubai, I don't know if you were aware of the latest agreements that was that happened in COP28, which is like to triple renewable energies and to double energy efficiency. That is something we can achieve easily with our potential in Africa. But what we're lacking actually is the financial support and the technology transfer, and that's something that we would love, to get access to. To advocate for human rights in the just energy transition. When we're talking about human rights here, I'm going to talk about the mining part of the critical minerals, the displacement of the people, the biggest lands actually that are used for the implementation of renewables. And this is something that we are trying, I would say, to compromise for, because I believe that every single solution is not perfect. There is always the negative aspects of it. So we definitely have to compromise, or else we go in just to live in energy poverty forever. Raise awareness about the renewables and energy efficiency. And I'm just going to give a small, actually, example of Nigeria that what happened this year when the government mobilized a lot of money to implement the renewables within the rural areas, and the people actually weren't even aware about like what the solar panels are, what's the function, why they are important for them. So at some point they started distracting the solar panel, and those solar panels are worth a lot of money. So it's very important to build the capacities, especially in the rural area places. And finally, to advocate for partnership and tech transfer and renewable energy. And here again, I'm going to highlight that the technology transfer is something that is very, very important, because, for instance, the 80% of the solar panels that we are using in Africa are imported from China. I'm not putting the blame on anyone here, but I'm just saying that if we have the necessary technology, at least we can just tackle also, the recycling part, because at some point these solar panels have some lifespan, determined ones, and waste is also, some critical issues that we have to tackle. And also for the support, for the financial support, there is the NCQG. We are just 1 week, apart from the COP29 in Baku. And this COP is called the Finance COP because the $100 billion that were agreed under the Paris agreements, the agreement will finish this year. So there is a new goal that is called the new collective and quantified goal that is going to be replacing the $100 billion. And as an African, I would say, continent, the AGN is asking for $1.3 trillion that is going to be per year, that is going to be covering not only mitigation, but also adaptation and loss and damage. So it's very important that the polluters pay the damage that they were doing, actually. And for that, we are, 3 minutes. So it's very important for the people, just to be aware that we are indebted, to these countries to pay for the damage that they've done to us so far. Another thing that I would love to talk about is clean cooking. That is something actually that we're not talking about a lot, and it's very important. And lately, there was the Africa Summit on Clean Cooking in Africa that was supposed to be held in Africa, because we are the ones actually that were supposed to decide for us, for our solutions. We know our problems. But out of nowhere, the International Energy Agency decided to hold it in France, to limit, of course, the representation of the African delegations. And there was like, they mobilized like some fund, I would say, like $2.2 billion from the government, and not only from the government, also the private sector. And guess what? The private sector, I'm talking about Total and Shell. They are the ones actually like providing this finance for clean cooking. How clean is it? I don't know. For the declaration, so I will just give you some numbers. Out of 30 countries that were represented at the summit, only 13 were Africans. Of course, there is that problematic of visas and financial support. Out of 102 civil society organizations, only 15 were Africans. And out of the 1,160 words, only 2 were allocated to women, knowing that in Africa, most of the cooks are women. So, which is like very sad, and I can't even find the right word to describe what is happening, because we're always waiting for the global north and other people to decide for us. And I can't actually express how frustrating it is. Okay, I have only 1 minute. Okay. I'm trying to be fast. So this is Can Africa, the different initiatives. I can talk about them later, during lunch or something. I'll be happy to share with you all the work that we're doing. Just a case study in Morocco, because I am from Morocco, and I'll be very, very quick. We have the second largest solar power plant in the southest part of Morocco with a capacity of 580 megawatt. And we are very optimistic in Morocco, like to reach 50% of electricity consumption based or renewable by 2030. Let me just tell you that being optimistic is good, but being too optimistic, then it's very bad. So we have 3 different plans. Of course, I'll be happy to, to share with you the presentation and probably just to go into details later. But you have that we're going to host the World Cup in 2030. And lately, Morocco again said that they will double energy output in the southern part of Morocco. I don't know how. We don't have the financial support. We don't have enough, resources. They're talking about green hydrogen, which is, again, not a good solution for us because green hydrogen is mainly based on water. We don't have water. We're suffering from the consequences of climate change. We're suffering from scarcity. It's not raining anymore in our region. I don't know where they're going to get the water from. Probably desalination or the treated wastewater. The 2 technologies are very expensive. We don't have the money. And nuclear. Nuclear is not a solution, especially we don't have the technology, necessary technology to tackle the waste, especially the toxic waste, the toxic byproduct, the whole, if there isn't any accident that will happen, it's just going to be, a disaster. So yeah, thank you for your attention. I'm sorry, actually. Yeah, I am a woman. I need more time to express myself. So I'm sorry.
Well, actually, hesitated to say you needed to stop because you really like to listen to this energized speech. And I think although it's not really looking to the impact of renewable energy on biodiversity, but on the other side, I think it's what will make us a very key point is it's not only the top-down, it's really need to be bottom-up. And I think there's also connection between China and Africa. We have the FOCAC, which is a government-to-government dialogue. And hopefully that in the future, we will have more kind of conversation at the NGO, at the ground level, and to make those messages be heard by more kind of top people. And that is one part of the mitigation. So thanks a lot. And for that, I would like to invite another speaker who has buried us for, he is in China, I think Hong Kong, and it's already midnight, but he is online. Professor Cai Zhiyang, the Assistant Professor of Environment Science of Duke Kunshan University. I wonder if the Professor Cai is still awake? Oh, he's here.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Choi. I am an assistant professor in environmental science from Duke Kunshan University. It's my great pleasure to be able to be here to share with you some of my peer-reviewed research efforts. Today's slides were mainly prepared by Chen, one of my key collaborators, who is a PhD student from Donghai University. In today's talk, my focus is on balancing the needs of migratory waterbird conservation and renewable energy development in East Asia. In the coastal area, in the coastal wetlands in East Asia, what you can see is a massive intertidal wetlands on the seaward side of the seawall, and usually an extensive amount of fish ponds on the landward side of the seawall. The coastal ecosystem in general is a highly productive ecosystem. It provides a lot of important ecosystem services to human beings, which includes food provisioning, purifying the water, and also to protect humans from waves and storms actions. The intertidal wetland ecosystem is also an important habitat for hundreds and thousands of migratory waterbirds along the threatened flyway, which we termed the East Asian Oscillation Flyway. In the last couple of years, because of the importance of energy transition from a fossil fuel reliant system to a system that relied more on renewable energy, a lot of renewable energy infrastructure has been built in the coastal area, such as the wind turbines that you can see here in this photo, and also the solar panel farms. Regarding to the offshore wind energy development, we have seen a rapid growth of the amount of offshore wind energy infrastructure being built in East Asia and in China in particular over the last couple of years. In the next couple of years or next decade, it's predicted that there will be even more larger increases from Asia, excluding China. So there is going to be a rapid increase in the amount of offshore wind turbines being installed. However, the impact on wildlife in East Asia has been understudied. What we have known so far about the potential impact of offshore wind energy on birds or wildlife in general comes mainly from studies carried out in Europe. What we know is that from time to time, birds and perhaps bats, they will collide with the wind turbines. And those offshore wind energy infrastructure may also create the so-called barrier effects, making migratory waterbirds to move away to take a larger detour in order to reach their destination. And there's also potential displacements due to disturbances that the wind turbines can create. What we can see here is 2 wind farms being built in Europe, offshore wind farm being built in Europe. And the courses here are where birds got displaced after the installation of the wind farms. So originally, the birds would be moving around, commuting around these blue areas, but after the wind farm was being built, the birds got displaced. And birds may also change their habitat preference, their habitat use pattern, because of the installation of offshore wind farm. So in order to study the impacts of offshore wind farm on migratory waterbirds, we carried out satellite tracking studies on one of the most endangered species in the world, called the black-faced spoonbills. So it has been recovering quite well in the last couple of decades. The population size used to drop down to only 300 individuals around the world, and now recovered to around 6,000 individuals. So it is listed as an endangered species, and within China, it's being listed as the Class 1 National Key Protected Wild Animal List of China. And this is an ideal species to study the impact of offshore wind farm on migratory waterbirds because of its relatively large body size. So it can carry a relatively heavy satellite trackers. So we use satellite trackers that were manufactured in China to understand the movement pattern of the birds. So this satellite transmitter can collect the location fix of the birds every 20 or 30 seconds when it's flying. So it provides us with a very high spatial and temporal resolution of the movement records of the birds. So one of the known impacts of the offshore wind farm on the bird is the barrier effects. Larger birds are known to be able to avoid wind turbines during their flights. But avoiding wind turbines would mean a low collision rate. So if we use the traditional way to quantify the impact of offshore wind farm on birds, then we may not be able to detect any negative impacts. But then would there be any cumulative effects? Cumulative effects occur when there are multiple wind farms, so making the birds making an extra effort in order to overcome the barriers. So in this one example here, all of these track records come from one individual bird. We name it the Y70. So this individual bird, in its first attempt to cross the Yellow Sea from the southwestern side of the Yellow Sea to the Korean Peninsula during northern migration, it actually has to make multiple attempts. The very first attempt occurred at late May, where it abandoned, it gave up the migration after encountering a wind farm. And then after 3 days later, it made another attempt. But again, after encountering wind farm, it decided to give up the migration. And finally, it made its way in its third attempt by mid-June. And by making these multiple attempts that we can see on the red lines here, this bird is one of the very last birds that crossed the Yellow Sea in that year, compared to all the other tracked individual birds. So the wind farm, the offshore wind farm, could potentially delay the migration of the birds. And in the second example here, we've got an black-faced spoonbill making its first attempt to migrate south during the southward migration period. What you can see here is that the bird was trying to cross the Yellow Sea from South Korea to China. And all the black polygons here are the offshore wind farms. So this bird migrated about 500 kilometers when it was just about 60 kilometers away from the shore, reaching its stopover destination. The bird stopped by the wind farm, circling around for about an hour before it returned back to Korea. So eventually this bird gave up its migration. It could be an effect, barrier effect of multiple offshore wind farms, as well as the unfavorable weather conditions, as reflected by the arrows in the background. So what are the possible solutions to mitigate the impact of the wind farm development on migratory birds? So detection is one method. So we can install devices on the wind turbines to detect the arrival of migratory birds. And hopefully by detecting the arrival, we can stop the wind farm, stop turbines temporarily. And we can also try to gain an understanding of the migration time window of the migratory water birds by using the weather radar as well as using the satellite transmitters. And of course, we can also adjust the way that we align the turbines or the way that we build the wind farms. So in the next effort, Amelia is trying to analyze the tracking data to identify if there's any hotspots or popular migratory pathway where the migratory birds would love to use. And by understanding that or by identifying those pathways, we can avoid building the offshore wind farms along those pathways. And our preliminary analysis showed that along the coastal areas, there may be such a hotspot, there may be such a popular pathway where the birds like to fly. However, when the birds are crossing the Yellow Sea, the birds may get spread out quite widely. In other words, if you want to use this approach by leaving some gaps between the wind farms, we may have to focus our effort along the coastal areas. And then my other postgraduate student, Chen, she's trying to look at another potential solution, which is to identify areas with relatively low biodiversity values. So this could be the areas that we can provide or suggest the developers or decision makers to build their offshore wind farm, thereby lowering the potential impacts on migratory water birds. So the key take-home messages here is that rapid renewable energy development is happening in East Asia and Southeast Asia. However, their impacts on wildlife has been underlooked. And there are various ways for us to do it in order to lower the impact of renewable energy development on biodiversity. And there's an urgent need to improve the communication between key stakeholders, such as decision makers, industrial partners, and conservationists, in order to balance the needs of biodiversity conservation and renewable energy development. And finally, I would like to acknowledge my funding agencies, including the National Natural Science Foundation in China, the Shenzhen Science and Technology Program, the East Asian Isolation Flora Partnership, as well as all the key collaborators. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks a lot for Professor Cai. Give us how far structure the birds can be along the flyway, especially hit the wind, and there's ways to mitigate from spatial planning at the beginning to really look into the potential technology to address this for the birds as one case study. And now we would like to look into another angle of how to manage or how to look into this. Would like to invite Ms. Wang Ziying. She is from the Friends of Nature staff attorney lawyer background to share with us her observation.
Hello, everybody. My name is Dorothy Wen, and I am from Friends of Nature, a grassroots NGO in China. So I'm going to talk about some legal perspective on synergizing renewable energy and biodiversity in China. So in my presentation, I'm first going to start with a brief introduction of the legal and policy framework in China related to renewable energy and biodiversity conservation. So the construction of ecological civilization has been a major part of the national strategy. So there are multiple laws and policies that are set out to safeguard biodiversity against negative impact of renewable energy. And one of the key laws is the Wildlife Protection Law. So it has some general requirements of avoidance. That is, any construction of renewable energy should avoid protected area, important wildlife habitat, flyway, and migratory channels. So in the case where avoidance is not possible, the project should adopt mitigatory measures. So we also see that there is also specific regulations on wind energy projects, such as they're setting out some prohibited area and also minimum distance and depth for like coastal wetland sea wind energy project. So we're going to start with some exciting stories. So as we are an NGO which we filed some lawsuits in China, and we have today I'm going to share 3 lawsuits case which is related to renewable energy development and biodiversity conservation. So the first one is about a hydropower construction in a green peafowl habitat. So this is different from the blue peacock that we usually see in the zoo. This is an endangered species native to China. And this case is about a hydropower station which is under construction when we filed the lawsuit. So once the construction is complete, it would flood the habitat of this endangered green peafowl. And this affected area is believed to be the largest and most complete habitat for this bird in China. So with our lawsuit and policy advocacy, the government first subsequently include this area into an ecological red line, and the court also ordered the construction to be stopped. So this was considered the first preventive public interest litigation on wildlife protection in China and was considered somehow a landmark case. The second case would be about the Chinese tulip tree area, which is a protected area safeguarded by indigenous people. Local community and it is considered a near threatened species and also class 2 of the list of national key protected wild plants. So what was happening there is that the wind farm that is constructed is actually located in this protected area, and when we filed the lawsuit, the court supported our case, and we also we also have the defendant, which is the renewable energy developer, to do ecological restoration at that site, which was previously has deforestation happening. And the third lawsuit is an ongoing one. It is my personal case. It is a solar farm happening in a mud flat that is along Bird Flyway. It is along the East Asia, Australasian flyway, which I believe Sue and also Dr. Choi has introduced just now. So you can see that when we were doing our site visit, there were like columns of the solar panel actually being placed in the mud flat. And there are actually birds also around. The black-faced spoon bill also visit this area. And one of the major feature of this case that we are concerned with is actually the wetland occupation and compensation balance requirement. So under the law in China, if there's any project that needs to occupy wetland, the project developer, they actually have the duty to compensate a wetland of the equal area and quality of the occupied wetland. But in this case, we see that even though a natural mudflat was occupied, the business company, they actually try to claim that they compensate the wetland by this reservoir. So we can see that actually these two kind of wetland, even though they were wetland, they were different types of wetland, and they offer different ecosystem services. All those water birds who forage in this mudflat, they would not be able to find the food that they need in this reservoir. So, and also this mudflat is actually considered as blue carbon as well, but in reservoir there is a different carbon sinking capacity. So we believe that this case we're trying to highlight the how this wetland occupation and compensation balance requirements is implemented, and we are trying to make sure that wetland is especially important for these water birds are not lost. So with increasing laws and policy in place to regulate renewable energy development and to minimize the negative impact on biodiversity, we can see that there is a gap between law and implementation. As the three cases that I have introduced just now, some renewable energy developments, they might cause loss of important habitat and also causing disruption to wildlife. So we are, as Friends of Nature, apart from doing litigation, we also advocate for more comprehensive policies. In the past few years, we are glad to see that there is the trend of renewable development in China. It is switching from capacity and scales to a more focus on energy security and ecological security. And today I would also want to share with you a more recent draft policy. There are more extensive detailed responses to the existing challenges of renewable energy and biodiversity synergy. This indicates a very strong signal and government's willingness to synergize these two important aspects, renewable energy development and biodiversity conservation. And we are also excited to see that the draft policy is responding to some of the challenges that we observed during our work. So I would like to go through some of the major breakthrough in this draft policy. So first of all, this policy is about onshore wind and solar energy development. It emphasized the importance to evaluate long-term overlapping and cumulative environmental impact. This is especially important because we noticed that there is a rapid increase in coastal solar projects locating along the bird flyway. So these projects may not have very significant impact on the birds in a short run, but in a long term, it is important to evaluate the cumulative impact. So as to ensure a balance between renewable energy development and wildlife protection. The policy also strengthens field survey and monitoring, which is important. Just as the first case, the green pea fowl case, in that area there is not very enough data of those green pea fowl. But if we have more field survey, it might be easier for us to plan our renewable energy map. And the policy also calls for continuous tracking of impacts during operation, as well as to implement adaptive measures to improve biodiversity. Last but not least, the policy also encourages input in scientific research on impact of renewable energy on biodiversity. This is particularly important because in the third case that I mentioned, which is the solar panel built on the mudflat, actually the solar company, they allege that the birds, they would still use the area underneath the solar panel. But from our understanding, there is insufficient scientific research as to is there any special type of species of bird that would no longer use this area once the solar panel is built. It's not very certain. So we need more scientific research on this area. So all in all, the draft policy is a big step towards nature-positive renewable development, renewable energy development, and Friends of Nature will continue to participate in policy advocacy and recommendations, particularly based on our work, to provide more input on how to strengthen the law and policy, as well as the implementation of them. I believe that China will have more and more positive cases to contribute to the global nature-positive renewable development. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for Ms. Wen Ziying's view about several cases and also looking into China's policy involving toward a very good decision. And I think more important is to have those kind of exchanges so different countries will know what's happened on each other's side. And for this, I will go to invite the next speaker for this session, Dr. Chen. She is the program director of Nature Watch project from the Shan Shui Conservation Center.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello everyone. Yeah, this room is full again. So lucky. And my name is Chen, and I'm from Shan Shui Conservation Center. I'm a program director for Nature Watch, a program that is data-based, evidence-based, and data-based biodiversity mainstreaming program. Today, I'd like to just share a preliminary study or our idea about what's the pathway toward eco-friendly renewable energy, especially. Some part of it is just focus on how to change Chinese companies. First, briefly introduce Shan Shui Conservation Center. Shan Shui is an NGO founded in 2007 by Dr. Lu Zhi, who just gave the keynote and call for the network. And we work on species conservation and ecosystem conservation. Especially in, we have a lot of community-based conservation programs in Western China and some citizen science-based biodiversity restoration in the Eastern China. And also, my program is the third one, which is building a database of biodiversity. And then, based on the data and analysis, we do some work with the companies, with the policy makers, with the investors, so that can just raise their awareness and the capacity on biodiversity conservation. So, back to our topic. China is the wind energy and solar energy is developing very fast in China. Actually, before 2023, we have already 15% of renewable energy, and then under the target of carbon targets, we will have even more renewable energy. Till 2050, we will have 60% of renewable energy. And also, Chinese renewable energy industry is not only influencing China itself, it also has the impact over the world, because of we have been exporting a lot of our equipments and also investments, and we are building, just supporting a lot of the wind farms and solar farms outside China. And inside China, our renewable energy development happens in a lot of areas in the Western China, especially in the deserts areas. And on the coastal line of China, it's also a hotspot. Actually, Chinese government and has already built up a law and conservation policy, conservation framework to protect all the species and ecosystems. And also this year, not only the laws, but also the information disclosure requirements from the financial regulation institutes are also asking for listed companies and also some very big companies owned by the country to do the biodiversity information disclosure. That is a very good trend for that. And also, we have a whole process of how to conserve biodiversity throughout the infrastructure, including the planning. You have to follow the planning, special planning, regional planning, and the whole planning. And also there are EIA, environmental impact assessment, which need to just do the survey for the current biodiversity status and then assess the impact and then give the mitigation suggestion or measures. And then we have, if the projects has spatial overlap with wetlands, when Dorothy just mentioned, there is a compensation balance policy for them. So actually, based on this framework, I think the conservation should be very good. But we have been observing the reality. The challenges still are there. Based on some open sourced data about where the wind farms and wind turbines and solar farms are, we have used biodiversity data like species distribution data and protected area data to overlap and analysis. We found 53% of the current wind turbines has potential impacts on biodiversity, especially for birds. And almost 29% of the solar power plants may have the biodiversity candidate impacts on biodiversity. What do we mean about the candidate impact? That means the data, the location are the farms, the energy farms have just 7 kilometers away from endangered species distribution record, or they have 5 kilometers distance from the national nature reserves. And then we have a lot of speakers already mentioned that China has a very important migrating flyway, which is the East Asian and Australian flyway. And on the left side, you have seen all the yellow points are wind turbines. And it's all over and all along the coastline. And there is another something we haven't seen in other countries. This solar power built just on the tidal flats. Actually, we don't have the knowledge how to collect data, how to assess the impact on if these big things are planted into the tidal flats. So even They are working on some legal issues. It's so hard to give the evidence. And another gap happened in the desert area. This is Palace Cat, and there is a big wind farm just built on the habit of the Palace Cat. But you know how to, if we want to assess the impact, we need long-term investigation, and we need a research-based evidence that we follow. But it's hard. We didn't find anything. So actually, we have been working on data collection and working on data tools for others. And we know exactly how big the gap of data in China is the reality. So we tried to make a sensitivity map for Jiangsu province, which is a very critical along the flyway, and has a lot of important feeding sites and resting sites for the migrating birds. And they have the most data covered. We tried, and you know, this is a very preliminary result. And for other provinces, we can even not just make this kind of sensitive map. Then above, all the information above are just within our report named Synergy of Renewable Energy and Bird in China, challenges and opportunities. And today, at this side event, I just want to release this report. So thank you for coming here, to be our first readers. And you can download this report through this QR code. And then beyond the report, actually we have been talking about what the strategy Shan Shui is going to work on, keep on working on this topic. We will just keep on doing this data set, the database, and then we will do independent observation like the assessment and the sensitivity map. And also we are just now contacting and having dialogue with a lot of companies and the industry, people from the industry. We want to just raise awareness of them. We want to build up the capacity of them, but it needs a lot of time. And then we talk with policymakers to do policy advocacies. Then, at last, I just want to mention, I have talked about a lot of difficulties, but there are a lot of opportunities at the same time. We have been talking to the industry, and we found several possible opportunities. First one, they have been rethinking about what if they need the capacity target as their only one target, because the energy consumption now has problem, and the storation has problem. So now they need to think about how to use the land more properly, not to just build more and more wind farms or solar farms, but to think about how to manage them. The second, the companies, Chinese companies, are facing a lot of challenges and pressures from the national policy and from outside of China because of civil society, because of the investors' requirements, and because of the other countries' policies. So they are now asking us what we can do to build up a strategy, what we can do to just be our first step action. Yeah, and I think it is time for us to seize this opportunity, and it's time that to fill the gaps. And like us, our Chinese organizations are working so hard on serving the internet and to collect all the information, know the knowledges, but that's not enough. Like the tidal flats, like the deserts, how to fill the gap. We need a lot of people to share the and exchange knowledge. That's why we are here today to call for this renewable energy and biodiversity network. And I think through this more dialogues, not only our gaps can be filled, but a lot of gaps in other countries can be filled in the future. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot for Dr. Chen's speech. I just want to quickly move back to the slides that have the report and have the code that you can scan and to read about that. I think that's one of the first reports to look into biodiversity and renewable energy at the national level by a domestic NGO. At the same time, I just remind every participant here, we have a table that we want to invite you to sign off your name and also your contact information if you want to join us to look into this and to move forward the network. So please do that. Remember to do that before you leave. And on the other side, please stay with us because we have another great session looking to, again, the renewable energy impact, but from the supply chain, and also not only the supply chain, but looking to the operation of those product issues all the way to the end of supply chain, how do we manage that. So for this, the first speak will from, I think she is online, right, Chen? She is Dr. Carmen Joseph. Okay, so if so, we move to, let's do another, I would like to invite Ray Victrins from Wildlife Conservation Society. Ray is the Director, Business and Conservation Program and has environmental economic background, worked on these issues for many, many years. And welcome, Ray. Give us a speech. Here.
Great, thank you. And then I just move this here forward? Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, thank you very much. Nice to be here. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about, I don't have a lot of slides to show you, but in just listening this morning, it was very interesting because there's a lot of mitigation that we talked about, and I think that the importance of mitigation, and I think we need to think about, in terms of all our planning, this concept of the hierarchy. And not only that we have a mitigation hierarchy that companies can follow, but that we really have an effort to promote the policies that enable this to happen. So it's really nice to hear about the work in China toward developing these policies because they're essential. And we also need to innovate. It was kind of interesting as I was watching some of the slides on solar power and the placement of facilities. And we were thinking, because we were having a conversation the other night, now we raise those solar panels up, right? And then underneath you could actually do restoration significantly. And then there's one project I know where they're actually going to be putting in sheep and grazing. So, you know, how do we use land more appropriately as we look at these developments? But that's a little bit outside the supply chain issue. But, you know, thinking about how we have to be really, really creative. So I think the big issue related to supply chains is really upstream, right? Because, so this is what we're seeing, right? This is minerals used in clean energy technologies compared to other generation sources. There is going to be significant demand for critical minerals in the development of clean energy. There's no way around that. It just has to happen. And so you know, we could get circularity and we could get more recycling, which is great. And that has to be part of this whole supply chain effort, for certain. But we're also going to be doing a lot of work in terms of developing both, developing new mining sites to have the minerals we need for this transition to take place. That's going to happen. That's just a reality. So one of the things that we've been talking with people about is the mining sector. If we're looking at supply chains, we need to go upstream to say where we're going to access these minerals and how we're going to access those minerals. And you know, there's lots of this, I think this theme here today is this concept of nature positive. So one of the models is, again, we start here with the application of the full mitigation hierarchy. So renewable energy companies need to work with mining companies and demand that the kind of minerals that we're actually getting are coming from the production from companies that are following the best practices possible, right? So, I mean, this is a huge ambition, but think about it. What if we could actually say, we want all the minerals, all the copper, all the steel that's coming, all the iron ore, to come from mines that are doing something really positive for nature. So that's what this model is about, working with the mining sector, one, to ensure that we have the application of the mitigation hierarchy. The other one is looking at what do companies need to do beyond their commitment to the mitigation hierarchy? What kind of claims are they going to be able to make to say, oh, we're making a contribution to the outcomes for nature that we really want to see. So once we move here, we have to move over here to this regional landscape approach. And ideally, we could see companies supporting the development of having alignment and meeting the goals of the NBSAPs of the country of the countries that are where these mines are located. So, and then we have mining companies. Now here's where we get the connection too, because we have mining companies then trying to influence the supply chain downstream. We have the renewable energy companies saying, hey, we want our upstream suppliers to be doing a better job at providing the materials that we use in a way that's more nature positive. So we get that connection between the downstream and upstream from these two industries. So that's an approach that I think that would be, very, very different from what we see today in the world. But it requires companies to say we're going to do this. But it also we need governments. We need governments to say, we want our companies to follow these best practice. And actually what we really do need, if we look at the reality, if we look at the reality, we need companies working with government to make sure that that can happen. Because oftentimes governments are a little bit concerned about pushing the private sector because they don't want to limit their investment. So we need to have companies showing that this can be done and actually pushing the agenda. And then finally, the last part of this is how do we engage at a board level, at a company level, so that there are decisions being made, are being made so that the companies are allowed to follow best practice, to really push for this agenda. So our goal, and this is something we're working at in the Wildlife Conservation Society, is right now to engage with the mining sector begin to identify some companies who say, we want to do this, engage with governments at the same time to push that agenda so that we have an approach or some outcomes that are actually both meeting the goals of the mitigation hierarchy and then going beyond that to address conservation issues at the landscape scale. So, and then, as I say, then we will clean up that supply chain, because then we can get, copper produced in a way that has done some benefit for nature. We can get steel production that is actually done from mine sites that have been following the mitigation hierarchy and actually contributing to nature, contributing to the NBSAPs. So that's our goal. It's a huge ambition. It's been very useful being here at COP, because all of a sudden we've had mining companies have said, let's try it. Let's see if we can do that. So if we can get them on board and then engage with government, I think we could be successful. And then we have this linkage across those supply chains, as I explained. So I think I'll stop there, and I appreciate you listening, and if you have any comments, I'd love to talk to you later. Okay, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ray. Give us a very ambitious view about what could happen, not only one part of the supply chain, but look from the upstream to all the downstream, because the mitigation hierarchy needs to happen along the chain to really make the difference. And happy to then move to the next one is the next speaker, Libby Sandbrook. She is the Director of Business and Nature from the Fauna and the Flora International. Libby.
Lovely, thank you very much. I think what I'll say now follows on nicely from what Ray has just talked about. We hadn't spoken before, so I wasn't sure if we might overlap. We've heard a lot about how much development needs to happen here with renewable energy, and we know very well from Ray, and well, all of us in the room know that this is going to vastly increase the demand for metals and materials. Now, if all mines in the world follow the model that Ray shared with us, we should feel relatively safe. But we know that the world is not as straightforward as that, and this is very complex. I just want to talk through some of that complexity and pick apart the complexity of the supply chain, of the types of minerals that we'll be sourcing, and of course where they come from in the world. So after going from the nature positive mine, we have minerals going to mineral traders, to material manufacturers, to component production, wind and solar original equipment manufacturers, wind and solar owners, energy traders, distribution networks, and then to the consumer. So we've got a lot to pick apart there. Traceability and understanding, responsible sourcing has really improved a lot over the last 20 years, but we're facing something quite new here on a very big scale that's going to require a lot of coordination to unpick and make sure that communication flows. We've also got a huge wide range of minerals and metals going into renewables. Just to give some example of it, I mean, these may mean something to you or not, but bauxite, aluminium, copper, iron, lead, manganese, nickel and steel, to name a few for wind, solar, bauxite, aluminium, copper, iron, silver, zinc. They're sourced globally from all over the place, including many very biodiversity-rich areas in South America, in Africa, throughout the world. So we've got a lot to learn, we've got a lot to unpick, not just about the potential biodiversity impacts of some of the mining that is being and needs to be done, but also, of course, the impact that could potentially have on climate change, where forests, for example, are concerned. So there's plenty of very positive things happening here. Biodiversity loss is fast being recognised, as we know, as an important contributor to supply chain risk, and it's fantastic to see the focus not only at an operational level but on responsible sourcing within TNFD as a new disclosure framework. TNSD recommends disclosures consider nature-related issues not just at an operational level but also within the value chain. Science-based targets for nature, similarly, recognise that we need to go beyond operations and look at upstream. And then, of course, compliance. So the EU as my closest example, coming from the UK, the EU's Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive also places increasing emphasis on supply chain transparency. There's also a lot of momentum building with end users wanting to take responsibility for mineral and metal impacts in the renewable sector and beyond. And we're seeing a number of very good initiatives, both within the wind and solar sectors. But a lot of these, you need to look into them. And if there are renewable energy companies in the room, don't just sort of think, oh, good, I see something there, that's the stamp I need. Look into them, because a lot of the responsible sourcing work and due diligence was born from human rights, from a human rights lens and looking at social dimensions. So the biodiversity aspect can often fall a bit short. That said, biodiversity information is becoming more accessible to mining and metal consumers. And Ray has touched on the nature positive framework, that fantastic framework that he's developing. There are a lot of already recognised standards that many of you will be aware of in the sector for mining and metals. They've come on a huge amount again over the last 20 years. There's a big effort within the mining sector at the moment to consolidate standards across various industry associations so that you can see stamps and easily recognise that they're doing the right thing, and you don't need to unpick the differences between different standards. There's also been work done on with artisanal small-scale mining as well, which is, of course, very important. But we need to be really real here and recognise there's a huge amount still to be done. We did an exercise. Sue talked about the work that we've been doing with IUCN. We're also part of that. Another important element, as well as looking at the impacts of developments themselves, is thinking about responsible sourcing and what needs to be done there. So Fauna and Flora did a bit of work. I didn't say at the beginning, I'm from Fauna and Flora. I hope most of you know who Fauna and Flora is. If you don't, we're a global conservation organisation. We work in about 50 countries around the world, and we've worked with the mining sector specifically for about 20 years now. So we've got oodles of experience dating back 20 years. Me personally, more than that. So, yep. A huge amount. So I kind of say with conviction there's still a lot to be done, both within the responsible sourcing and the mining space. If you dig into both the wind and solar sectors, there are gaps. Not all of the minerals going into wind and solar are covered in existing standards. Traceability, not least because of the complexity of supply chains, remains a concern. And there's also a lot of work to be done to integrate biodiversity better into standards for artisanal small-scale mining. And even from a mining perspective, just digging a little bit deeper into mining has a huge immediate impact. So even where companies are following the mitigation hierarchy that Ray talks about, there can still be a time lag between the negative impact that occurs from mining and the efforts that go into trying to restore biodiversity that's been lost, either on-site or elsewhere. So it's really important to be mindful of that, particularly given the tight timeframes that we're working within, the rapid rate at which the mining developments alongside the renewables are happening, as well as obviously our global societal goals and the urgency with which we know to address them. So the focus now, there's a huge role for government here. Governments obviously are under enormous pressure to transitions to net zero and to provide energy security for their populations. But they must, as well as thinking about the impact that the development of renewables is going to have, also think hand in hand with that about the mineral production happening both within their countries and where they're sitting in consumer countries, where they're sourcing from. There's intelligence building that needs to be done both by the government and industry to get a better handle of this. And also I think as well from a government perspective to be real about the mitigation hierarchy that we talked about, its implementation, understanding the time lag, and also just making sure that all companies are following this. I mean, at the moment we know that a lot of mining companies are, but not all. It's the better mining companies that are doing that. So making sure that there's regulation in place so that all mining happens in a good, responsible way with the right outcomes for biodiversity. And we also need strong supply chain regulation in consumer companies that incorporates biodiversity. From an industry perspective, I really hope to see the industry clubbing together more to learn, to really better learn and look ahead as quickly as possible at the mining and minerals that are going to be needed for this transition and get a better global picture of what that looks like from a biodiversity perspective. We've started to dig into that a bit as an organisation, but that's absolutely something that's come out of the work that we've done together. We don't at the moment really have enough information. I saw some fantastic things here about, that's me, that's not the fantastic things, saw some fantastic examples of projects to really sort of understand that from a high level, from a renewable development perspective. We need the same when we look at the sourcing of materials for this. We need a really deep dive into the state of play for inclusion of biodiversity and renewable energy responsible sourcing standards as well. And I hope as well over time that as the mining sector is trying to do and consolidate standards, that there's a consolidation of standards across the renewable sector as well. So it feels very bitty at the moment. And more collaboration, I think Ray talked about this, but more collaboration between renewables and mining to ensure that the renewable sector understands that best practice is happening. And I talked about the huge range of materials going into these installations. We need to prioritise, not try and cover everything, but think about what's most important and where we're going to have the greatest impact. And circularity. It's not something I want to talk about now, but it has to provide the backbone to all of this. We need to get better at making sure that we're designing for longevity, we're designing for reuse and repair, and that we're making the most of the materials that are already in circulation as we develop more much-needed renewable energy. And our guidance will be available soon. It's the last piece of guidance from a long series of work, so it'll be available soon for us to share with you. We'd love to do that, so if you're interested, please do reach out. And also thinking about it's just the start. We've got to do a lot on this and a lot quite quickly. So if you're interested in joining our collective effort to do that, then we'd welcome you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Libby. From one side, Ray gave a very good, ambitious picture about what is the potential, what we should look into, and then Libby gave more kind of complex about what it can from the top down, but also a lot of details, challenges, and a lot of things take time, but we don't have that time to wait or to collect everything, so we need to prioritize and figure out what is the biggest gap we needed to really work on. That's the end of the session, and then now we move to the last, but not least, around the table. I would like to invite the panelists, Professor Lu Zhi from the Peking University, Libby Sandbrook from the Fauna and the Flora International, Dr. Julia Gotti online from the impact asset management. That's from the investor side. And also Emilio Tahido, the global head of environment, Iberdrola. I think that's from the energy company side. So yeah, I think I cover all the panelists, right? Yeah. And the one online, have we got? Hi, Julie, could you turn on your camera? We can, if we could, you allow us to see you online. Oh, great. Can you hear us, right? And would you like just a test if we can hear you? No, we could not hear her. Just double check if... Julia, maybe you need to check your volume.
As high as it goes.
Oh, yeah, great. We get
better?
Yeah. Great. Thanks a lot. Now we get everyone here. I want to say this roundtable is really try to, first of all, invite panelists to make a discussion, but I want also to open the discussion to all the participants here, like a collective discussion. There's 3 questions I want to give to our panelists to talk, and I will then invite our audience to also intervene with some of those. And if you further have some other questions, I would like to organize and have some exchange. So for our panelists here, I want to ask everyone just to quickly give an insight from your side, especially thinking about your role, the stakeholder features of yourself and the organization you represent, and see how the insights about renewable energy and one of the best practice you would like to highlight or share with the participants here. So may I ask Professor Lu Zhi to start?
Yeah, I have been working concerned about renewable energies for a long time. Actually, since the hydropower development that's boomed in China, which is still continuing. The impact of hydropower is obviously very significant regarding the freshwater ecosystems. And there has been guidelines from developers, actually. And also China has been improving its environmental impact assessment procedures and standards. There are ups and downs. So of course, after all, the renewable energy development, from my limited observation, I see that it's part of a development. So good planning and good design of projects that taking biodiversity and human rights into consideration are always needed. I mean, there's always struggle on that. So I guess that's why it's important to involve multiple stakeholders on the table to have this dialogue, to exchange ideas and also see the boundaries for each other. Everyone has a boundary. Of course, the ultimate boundary is drawn by policies. What is allowed, what is legal, what is illegal. And civil societies, the watching from civil societies and people's organizations are absolutely important to provide or to supervise this the practice on the ground. In the meantime, I do see growing concerns and interest from energy companies to become more sensitive and sensitive and more considerate to other benefits. We've been, as Shan Shui Conservation Center has been working with energy companies as well as investors to try to actually, I think what the concerns are there, but what we are missing, we're lacking most is good examples. And you ask me to raise good examples, it's kind of hard actually. We need better, more good examples to illustrate what Libby has just said. Things can be done. Actually, the person from WCS, yeah. The government needs to know what can be done. Businesses could showcase what could be done. I raise an example from perhaps irrelevant industry, from real estate development. Well, I remember when at the Copenhagen Climate Summit, it's the business leaders went to Chinese government and said, we could do it. Please go ahead to make the pledge to the world. So government's concern is that you can influence the economy, but businesses also should be able to present, showcase what they can do. Also, we're talking about risks and opportunities as well. So there's an increasing. I think the standard for construction, for development will increase, will raise the bar, and also investment is now being raised to money raised to invest the better performance. So all these different aspects need to be balanced and taken into considerations. Sorry, it's been long.
No, and I think we actually have quite enough time. We kind of occupy this space for next hour, I think. So, but also want to just make sure the time enough for our audience also to make some interview. To say that we may not have perfect practice, but I think we have involving good practice, and we have mentioned about companies a lot. So maybe may I just invite Leo to share your insights and to give us some encouragement about good practice.
Well, thank you very much. If we're talking about protecting and taking care of biodiversity within the energy sector, in particular renewable, but energy in general, I think the first thing you need to have is the will to do things right. I mean, and that's might seem like obvious, but it's very important. Companies need to understand that it's of paramount importance that they integrate the need to protect biodiversity within their processes and deliver and prepare action plans and objectives that they are trying to meet. Otherwise, it's going to get very challenging because development projects require a very step process, and if you don't have the right incentives at the very beginning to understand and integrate biodiversity, then it will be very hard afterwards and down the line, because there will be budget problems, there will be operational problems, everything. So first the will, the strategies, the objectives, then deliver processes, adapt your internal processes to integrate that. The mitigation hierarchy, that's basic, it's unavoidable. And then once you are delivering your projects, establish connections, alliances, work with organizations like Birdlife or Flora and Fauna. I mean, different organizations that are trying to preserve and conserve nature. R&D, we need to reduce impacts. All of that has to be built around your company and your activity. Find the right partners to deliver the outcomes. Those processes require that you understand your impacts on biodiversity. You need to look at how you do things, how you build, how you operate, everything, and then identify your impacts on biodiversity. I mean, it's been said all around COP, measure and act, and then report. Well, that's another thing that might seem very, very basic, but it's very important. Once you have the objective, the need for measuring comes immediately, otherwise you cannot say you're meeting your objective. So evaluate assess your impacts, and once you have them, you can act against those material impacts. And I don't know if I have time, but I have some examples I could maybe share later on what we've done as a company. And by the way, like you, I haven't said what Iberdrola is. Iberdrola is a multinational energy company. We have activity in multiple countries, well over 40 gigawatts of renewable assets, well over 1 million kilometers of overhead lines, and almost all technologies, hydro, renewables, I mean, wind, solar, offshore, the whole enchilada. I'll talk later more.
Yeah, it's my fault. I should actually remind you that need to give an introduction first, because I think I may not be the right one to mention about that. But I will give that later to have more best practice. To say that, I would like to move to. Let me ask. Which one? Julia first, because you are from the investor side, another kind of a piece of the whole pictures in this topic. Would you like to share the first to give an introduction of your organization? I won't do the mistake again, but and then to give the insight from your side, and also if you have a simple, maybe not that simple, best practice to share for the first round.
Thank you very much. So I'm. Yes. Impacts Asset Management. This is an asset manager. We are located or headquartered in London. And we have about $50 billion in assets under management globally, and our only purpose, our sole purpose, is to invest in the transition to a sustainable economy. Do you have a problem? Problems? Can anybody hear me?
Hello, can you hear us now? You have frozen. I'm sorry. Maybe we just want to ask Julia. Could you hear us, or maybe we want you to rejoin? Just bear with us to see if the next minute Julie can overcome the technical issues. If not, I will just go ahead and then went for tech. Oh, now, Julia, can you hear us now? I think she is typing. Hello?
Hello.
Hi. Yeah, we can hear. Yeah. Can you try again? Previously, yes. We hear a little bit squeak kind of sound, so want to try again, please.
All right. So I would start. Impacts Asset Management is a British asset management firm. We have about $50 billion in assets under management, and we invest in the transition to a sustainable economy. So biodiversity is very important to us. So in terms of sort of best practice, what we've seen, and I agree with Professor, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name, but the first speaker, that we are not replete with great examples out there. But when we look at funds that are good, usually in bond markets, the place to start is with a thorough biodiversity assessment. That means not only knowing the ecosystems in the construction area, but noting any offsite impacts and dependencies on the development as well. So for example, if there are no bat nests in the construction area of a wind farm, hunting or migration may still bring native bats or any bats into the path of a turbine blade, and we know that that can cause mortality. So it's important to sort of understand the functioning of the entire ecosystem where the development is planned. It's equally important to do a fair assessment of what impacts the renewable energy development will have on the function of the ecosystem and ecosystems on the site. So it's the impact, basically. Renewable energy development almost always involves some sort of land use change. And as we all know, land use change is one of the key drivers of biodiversity loss. So, for example, does the development sit in the middle of a wildlife corridor? Does the development result in any deforestation? If you cut down a forest to put up solar panels, that's not necessarily net positive. And even if it doesn't, if you don't have to cut down a forest, if it's still in a desert scrub ecosystem, you can still have major habitat changes. And it's important to note that what those would be and how that would affect the function of the ecosystem. And one thing that almost nobody does is tell us how much impact the roads will have. If you're going to build a wind farm or a solar farm or something, you're going to need roads to maintain and service equipment in the area. And those roads provide a huge source of ignition for wildfires. So if your roads are, not sort of cleared enough to protect the area from wildfire, that could not only threaten the solar farm itself, but put countless tons of carbon into the atmosphere. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Julia. I think you add another piece of puzzle. It's not only direct impact, but a lot of indirect impact needed to measure and monitor and to work on. And then I would like to invite Libby, because you already have more than 20 years. You already have the first presentation, but I want to ask you again from your insight, especially, I will just try again. Do you have some good practice, that case, that can to let us think about, well, maybe not enough, but we have a good start, a good process already?
Yes, absolutely. Am I on now? Yeah, absolutely. And some of you have come into the room since I spoke, and you're asking me to give my perspective from my vantage point in my organisation. So I'm going to reintroduce myself. So I'm Libby Sandbrook, and I'm the Director of Business and Nature at Fauna and Flora. We're the world's oldest conservation organisation. We're 120 years old. We're very lucky to have David Attenborough as our president, and we work in 50 countries across the world. All of that matters because we've got a huge amount of learning and knowledge in the organisation. And that knowledge, a lot of that, so the vast majority of my colleagues are on the ground doing conservation work day to day, seeing what needs to be done and doing it, and making sure that we have the science and the knowledge to understand what difference that's making so that we can understand whether we're moving towards our objectives. And that's absolutely key here. And in my role, it's taking all of that very local knowledge and trying to use that to best influence to try and help shape fast evolving frameworks. So Emilio, you talked about the import. You can have all of the most fantastic standards, ambitions, etc., in the world up here, but if it doesn't translate into tangible action on the ground, then it's meaningless. So we, with our partners, and I know it will be very much the same for Birdlife, one of the most important roles I think we play as a kind of independent partner in it is to help to verify and help to say, great, this is working here, but actually it's falling short here. You need to put more resource in or get a better understanding of this. And there are many companies, I know you've talked about doing it yourself, but there are lots of good examples of companies, both in the renewable sector, actually in the wider energy sector, in the mining sector, who've been plugging away at this for years and have good examples to share. And we need to take those examples and wrap them up and as you said, share them with government to help governments to frame this. So there isn't one single bullet. There's a lot of good practice out there. We need more, but we need to make sure that the good practice that's really grounded in tangible and demonstrable impact is shared so that we can see where we're all heading to. And if I can have one more go. So when I said I've worked with mining for longer, I was involved in something called the Mining, Minerals and Sustainable Development Project over 20 years ago that led to the formation of ICMM, which is the industry association for the mining sector that really tries to sort of provide the guiding light for its members on everything to do with sustainable development. And I think that the emerging renewable sector it's not emerging, it's established, but it's evolving very fast, could do with something similar. So because it's multifaceted and it's having to establish itself very fast in kind of, some new companies, some previously oil and gas companies transforming, etc. There's a need for much more cohesion and collaboration in that sector to really dig into all of the issues we've been discussing today. And again, there are examples from past experiences. The mining sector's not alone in that, of sectors coming together on sort of pre-competitive, non-competitive issues like this to say, there is a global societal need for us to do this right. Let's pool our knowledge and our power, our potential to make a difference and see what we can do together.
Yeah, because I made the introduction earlier and I left my good examples for later, but I mean, we're talking about the good examples. I would like to say a few. And the first one would be in line with what I said earlier, to have the will to do things right. To me, the first example is to set the right strategies within the company. We in Iberdrola delivered, we have prepared our biodiversity plan, which is a strategy that sets the targets for 2030, sets the methodologies to evaluate our impacts, and sets the processes for the company to shift the way we are doing things. So to me, that's the first step for a company to establish your goals and your methodologies. Once you do that, we did that we launched the biodiversity plan in Kunming, Montreal, 2 years ago. We started implementing everything within the network, within our businesses. So they started evaluating if they had plenty of data of their impacts on biodiversity. So we started pulling all together and started presenting those data differently. So they started to understand where the main impacts were, where the hotspots were, and they have started to deliver action. For example, in Spain, where we have plenty of wind farms, we very quickly identified red kite as being, a red kite is a predator in Spain, which is protected. It's a European bird, and it's under protection from the IUCN red list. And then we identified that, so we have already said, okay, where are our hotspots? We have also prepared a program to protect an area where red kites spend their winter in the north of Spain. So we acquired the land and we are protecting that to try to solve the problem. Furthermore, given the danger of bird impact on wind turbines, we are partnering with research institutions in Spain. We are doing R&D projects to deliver new technology that combines cameras with radar and artificial intelligence, so we can track where a bird is getting close to the wind farm, identify the species, define the route and the possibility of collision, and then stop that turbine that might be collision. And we are developing that. In our networks, again, we have impacts on our overhead networks with collision and electrocution. And we have, again, got into R&D projects to define new technologies, and we are updating our overhead line posts to prevent electrocution. And we have already upgraded over 350,000 posts in the most critical areas in Spain. And we're doing the same in the US and in Brazil. So there are things that you can do today, and where you see impact, positive impact. You change the way you operate things, the way you interface, all of that. So there's a lot that can be done and that we are already doing. But again, starting from the will, from the strategy, from the processes.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Yes, I think from the will, everyone, no matter it's NGO or it's investor or it's company, to really have a strong will. And when we're talking about organization, sometimes people forget it's not one person. It's a group of people that need to have a collective willingness to take action. Otherwise, it's just a falling piece very quickly. And this is why we want to have more kind of collective voice and to look into this, and to just a quick echo what Libby mentioned. There's a lot of actually practice collective have a lot. But on the other side, when we read some of those practice, we just think that's not enough. There's a lot of small piece that's buried in a very bigger picture that needed to be translated to the practitioners so they know what exactly the cost, what is the very small but critical technology needed to be used. So to have models practice to be translated in details to share with all different people, so everyone can start to not just see a bigger, oh, we need to do mitigation hierarchy, but really see what exactly every step needed to go and where is the lessons come from. To say that, I want to ask the second follow-up, the second question is the challenge. Actually, we have already talking about a lot of challenges in all those different presentations. I want to ask every panelist to highlight one challenge you think, or one barrier you think really need to move. No, everything need to move away. One barrier you think definitely we needed to work on now or in the next 1 or 2 years to really make a difference or to move forward toward the 2030 between the biodiversity and the renewable energy. May I ask Julia to have the first try? You're muted, I think. No? Oh, now, yeah, I can. Now we can hear you.
Thank you. I just got a new computer, and unfortunately the audio isn't always on, but it seems like it's working now, so I'll go. So the top challenge we see, especially in the investment world, is that biodiversity often has no monetary value, even though we know it has the irreplaceable economic value to society. In most economies, in most circumstances, damaging biodiversity can be done without any consequences, no cost, no nothing. It's what we economists call an externality. Until the Kyoto Protocol went into force, carbon was the same. But now, in many places, emitting unlimited carbon does have a price attached, and then cap and trade systems establish upper limits for emissions. The same is not true for biodiversity. It may never be. So a ton of carbon is a ton of carbon anywhere in the world. It's not site specific. We don't have a measurable unit for biodiversity. There are a lot of proxies out there, like a certain degree of proximity to a biodiversity hotspot or the designation of a certain species as endangered or threatened. But the only way we have to estimate the values of loss are indirect. Until then, we're going to be in the position of doing absurd things like saying 1 acre of rhino habitat is worth 180 acres of hummingbird habitat or something like that, or complaining, comparing population sizes or acres lost or counts of genetic diversity. If preserving nature doesn't have an economic cost, it's hard for investors to find ways to invest in it. There's no stream of revenue that comes from leaving nature alone. One of the best things that governments can do is to help create tailwinds for biodiversity protection and restoration, and that is enough price on it. Even if that just means establishing hard boundaries for things like the amount of land that can be converted into other uses in the environment. If there's no regulatory, if there is regulatory frameworks for illegal land conversion, that is a mechanism for establishing a price, just as limiting carbon emissions helps to establish a price. It's going to be difficult, of course. It's not easy to figure out how to price things that are essentially not priceable, but we have to be able to put some kind of monetary penalty for increasing the drivers of biodiversity loss. And one of the best places to start would just be mining, like what Libby was saying.
Thanks a lot. That's really a very challenging point. I think for conservationists, we also needed to think about how to work on that together. But I also think there's something that could not be priced, and how we really address that part. Also, we'll need to have more conversation with investors and the companies. To say that, I want to give the floor to Professor Lu Zhi. What is the biggest challenge of the barrier we really need to work on now?
At this moment, I think the most important thing is to break the wall, to talk to people in different sectors to share information and share knowledge, examples, and policies and best practices. As just we heard from Emilio, yes, Emilio, his company's practices that you should make this known to people, to encourage not only the other businesses but also people like us to understand where we have a lot to share, a lot in common, goodwills, for example, kindness to earth and to other people, etc. There's some basic things that everybody has in their mind. This need to be liberated somehow and inspire each other. So that's why we have this network. If you have, we have a piece of paper for you to sign up to join the network if you would like to. I think that what we can share is far beyond information. I think encouragement from each other is very important. So this group needs to be bigger and bigger. At this point, I think I would like to emphasize that cross-sectoral communication, and so we also build understanding to what challenges businesses have. I think the special case with renewable energy, it is a development, but it's a different development because it's related to mitigating carbon emission. So to make it a green energy, to make it greener, that considers biodiversity is a target. But of course, we have to understand all the processes and the policies needed, the markets that could be encouraged, and so on. And from the civil society, we have the responsibility to share this information as well. The opportunities too.
Yeah, it's really to break the wall, to break the ice, and continue to have the conversation. I think is very key. And sometimes, actually, quite a few stakeholders or different groups hesitate to do that because think waste the time. But on the other side, it's really need to take time to have those conversations. What will be your looking at the challenges from the business side?
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons we are here is to try and get in contact with others and present the way we do things and learn from others. And that gets to the point I said at the beginning, collaboration and alliances. And by the way, we have all our biodiversity strategy on our website, and I would encourage you to go there and have a look at it. And we have a fantastic biodiversity report, which we publish every 2 years, more or less. And it's a very beautiful document where we present everything we do on nature, a lot of projects, a lot of outcomes. So it's very interesting. Challenges, a number of those. I don't know if I can pick one, but I'll pick two, but very quickly. I mean, we are a company. We're in a competitive market, so regulation is a key barrier because we have our own strategy. We want to do things right. We want to be positive on biodiversity, but it's hard for the business to engage in a not well-regulated market in terms of environmental regulation, because you would be competing with less probabilities of success, because other companies might do things differently. So regulation is a key barrier and it requires bold commitment from the businesses, and a company as big as Iberdrola, that can be challenging as well, because objectives are different. And another important barrier that I think is critical, we are talking about net zero on biodiversity, net positive. We are so used to measuring negative impacts, and we have always forgotten to measure the positive impacts. So we are so used to evaluating, quantifying, so we know very well, or quite well, how negative our impacts are. But when you are doing the positive side of that, how to demonstrate, how to tell everybody, look what I did, this has delivered so many benefits, and this here and this. That's also challenging because that makes the story harder to sell. And it's important, very important, to show the outcomes and the good stories that you were asking about. That's an important barrier, I think. We need to focus on the positive side of our actions, our impact, our positive impacts, to be able to say, I mean, this is what we are doing, this is what we are delivering, and this is how we are trying to balance our negative impacts. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think the policy is not as fast as the business is moving on, and see how the policy can continue to really encourage the good things to happen, not stay back to.
Yeah, more bolder regulatory environments would be fantastic. I mean, we are operating in Europe where regulation is quite strong, Brazil as well, the USA, but then you might get into other markets where regulation is maybe under development still. So maybe collaboration between governments to try and share best practices. So these regulatory environments would be developed faster. So we all play under the same parameters.
Yeah. I will hold on some of the. I think some of those points maybe a little bit will need more discussion. I think some of the audience may have very different opinion, can be discussed later. But I want to ask Libby to highlight if one at least. No,
one's
one.
fine. Yeah. I think the biggest challenge that we face now is the need to think holistically about this and to plan. And the challenge with that is that we don't have time. So I usually get frustrated if we spend too much time focused on perfection and we don't act. We need to act here. We are acting, investments happening. So we need to pull all of the best knowledge and good practice that we know of and do what we can with that. But we need, there's a massive role for governments here in not just regulation, but in holistic planning of what they need to achieve in their countries, with the energy transition obviously being at the heart of that. We've talked a lot about biodiversity today, but there's a hugely important social element to this as well, and of course economic. And the UK government has recently announced, I want to call it a commission, I'm not good at names of things, but to a group of people who will think about this. What do we need to achieve in terms of the renewable energy transition, and how does that fit in to the whole piece? And I know the good examples that we have at the moment, often it's not like mining where you say, we want to go there, please, because there are minerals that we know are there that are worth something and we want to dig them out of the ground. I think often renewable energy companies are on the receiving end of government saying, yep, we'll put it there, please, and there, please. So that sort of holistic planning that has to happen to do this effectively, and to do that it's time. It has, the two need to go hand in hand now, but that's absolutely critical. And of course, it's not too late. There's much more to come.
Yeah, to really make the action, not hesitate if the data is not enough. We still need to take the action. I think that, but sometimes people hesitate to and make excuse. Not only one stakeholder, a lot of stakeholders will hesitate to do because no data set, but action still need to have. I would like to, before open the Q&A, just the last question, and that is about the network that's proposed in this event. And I want to just again to ask everyone to pay attention. That our panelists, especially the Shan Shui, the host Shan Shui Conservation Center, proposed to have a network that's among different stakeholders. To together to share the knowledge, to share the experience and the lessons, to have more conversations. And we really want to invite you to be part of that. And you're interested in this conversation, interested in this network, please sign off your name and the contact address. In that we have a form. So before you leave the room, leave your message and leave your contact information, and we will also follow up, and we will remind you we will follow up. So for the network, may I just ask each of you to give one suggestion? So for example, if for the next 12 months, when we now initiate this network, what we should do for the next 12 months. I think you can suggest hundreds of things, but please pick one of those most important and think about this network initiated by the organization leading in China, which is a leading country for renewable energy. So that's maybe a very important feature for you also to think about your suggestions. If so, may I, from Libby to start with?
Yeah, absolutely. And I could say 10. I'm going to choose one. If I were to choose one thing you focused on this year, it would be gathering those stories of good practice and sharing them so that we can swiftly move to more action.
Great. And Emilio.
I would recommend that you have a look at the landscape of initiatives, because this is a very important matter, how to develop infrastructure like the energy infrastructure, renewable energy. There are a number of groups already there, so I think it would be good to evaluate what's there. We have the World Economic Forum, we have WBCSD, we have maybe other organizations in Asia that I don't know of, that they're working in similar, with similar ambitions. So evaluate what they're doing and try to build on top of them instead of trying to replicate, unless you want to go maybe a geographical separation, because maybe the groups are more centered in the West and you want to do it in the East, and that would be fantastic as well. So evaluate what's in there and grow on top of that. That would be my suggestion.
Great. And also, Julia? Are you ready to give a suggestion? I'm sorry. Try again.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Awesome, okay. Like Libby, or like Emilio, I could give 1,000 suggestions, or at least 10, but I'll limit it to one. And that one, in addition to everything that everybody's already said, I think we also need to do a census of all the subsidies governments give to industries that are most responsible for biodiversity loss, and eliminate those subsidies if we can. We need to do that for climate too. I think sharing the good stories is great, and we can do that, but I think as long as we are funding things that lead to biodiversity loss, if we're subsidizing those, we need to really think very carefully about whether that subsidy is worth it.
Nice. Those are very important, but some of those also need to think about that. Thanks a lot for all the panelists for all the 3 questions. Now I would like to open the Q&A for the panelists here, but if also for the other speakers, if you have any questions. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Congratulations. I'm Rodrigo Salles. I'm an environmental and climate change attorney. I have a question on the very important field of responsible sourcing. And we know that there are plenty of data of how indigenous people and indigenous territories have been key to preserving biodiversity. And this is a very difficult front between the mining industry particularly and this very important source of biodiversity conservation. So in which extent in your fields are you working on that, like in Fauna and Flora, or how the investment fund policy relates to that, or if Birdlife has a policy of helping, sourcing mining resources from those areas, and we have a lot of sensitive issues going on, or also in the research or academic side as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's a question. Can I have a go? Yeah, please go ahead.
That's a really important question. Thank you. I'm a social scientist by background, and in my early career, I worked all the time with local communities in Africa in particular. So I found it quite interesting coming into into a conservation organisation. Our work is 100% embedded in working with local partners and local communities. And that's the essence of all of the conservation work that we're involved in. But interestingly, our work with corporates, with companies, has historically been with their biodiversity divisions, thinking very much about biodiversity, with science and measurements, etc., that have often been developed by academics somewhere else and others working in the field. So I think that it is something that I see in the work that we're all doing together, an understanding of the need to really properly listen to and understand the values held by local communities and go beyond that and actually bring that into the decision making that's being made by companies when they're thinking about the mitigation hierarchy, and not just how they mitigate impacts, but as Ray was talking about, how they look for opportunities to create a net positive impact. Think about who sort of helps to steer that path, and how we listen to one another, and how we share thoughts and ideas about values to come up with the best sort of shared solution. And I see the shift from sort of trying to do as little harm as possible to actually doing something positive, moving us quickly into in the business world, into understanding that often the best outcomes are those, pretty much always I would imagine, but that may be my bias, to those that were properly incorporating local values, local decision making. So I've given a long answer to that, but I think I see your point is really, really important, and I see things moving in that direction quite fast now. And I'm not to say it wasn't there before, but there was a long way to go. And I think we'll see a lot of advancement there over the next few years as companies get more sophisticated themselves in thinking about what their relationship with nature is and how they work with others in their landscapes to achieve nature positive outcomes.
Yeah, thanks for the question. The way we have approached that is, understanding your impacts is key. The first step, as I said at the beginning, but we have to manage them all. Our direct impacts, direct operations are managed properly. Managing the value, the supply chain is critical and very important, and we have a responsibility as a big company and a major buyer of hardware to drive our supply chain to better standards. It is true that the mine is really far from us. We buy hardware from big companies that produce that hardware, and then they buy their metals from steel manufacturers, coppers, whatever, and then those buy mine, whatever. So it's a long chain, and it's really challenging. So the way we're working is we have set up a supplier evaluation program, and we have increased our requirements on our hardware and the services that we procure to start the chain of responsibility. And we are sending our suppliers the message that Iberdrola is interested in understanding what impacts their products and services have in terms of emissions, in terms of biodiversity impact, social communities, of course, and circularity, which is also critical. You mentioned earlier, Libby, as well. So that's the first step. It's to tell our suppliers that Iberdrola wants to understand what their impacts are on the products and services they are delivering to us. We reserve the duty of, the right to audit and follow perform assessments on whether the information is correct or not, and then maybe go all the way to the mine. But we have to understand that the suppliers have to reply to all their customers. So it's a matter that the sector has to sort out. I mean, the supplier sector, I mean, the hardware, I mean, the wind turbines, the transformers, the cables, them as a sector need to sort the problems, and then they go to this following sector, which would be steel or copper metals in general, or to sort the problem. Otherwise, it would be completely unbearable for anybody to understand and to reply to. But it's our responsibility as a big company to push that movement, that evolution for our suppliers, and start the chain of improvements, but taking care of the whole supply chain and understand if we've identified an issue somewhere, of course, then we deliver action immediately. We identify a problem in a mine or with the social community, local community, whatever, then we act immediately. But it's really challenging, and I know supply chain is everywhere. Everyone is asking about supply chain, but it's a massive problem that has to be sorted on a sector by sector, step by step. But again, we have the responsibility to initiate that change by improving our standards and requesting better environmental performance and social performance of all the products and services that we procure.
Yeah, and also Julia. Now we can hear. Try again.
Okay. It's up to make sure that what we just said is so true, and Iberdrola is the kind of company we actually look for, one that actually understands that the supply chain needs vetting, and they do a lot of things to make sure that that is happening. You can't do anything at scale and not have any environmental impact. It's just not possible, right? But you need to understand what it is. So you can see on our website, we have an impact policy on nature, biodiversity, and deforestation. What we do is we look for companies that understand the impacts of their entire value chain, both upstream and downstream. We do that at the macro level by identifying the key environmental risks and opportunities of every sector in a major global index. And then we do it from the bottom up level by having a process we call ESG 2.0, which is basically assessing every company's impact on the environment, on society, on communities, on workers, on people, and then avoiding the companies that we think are below need for their industry compared to their peers. So we're taking it into account. It is something that, as Emilio said, you kind of have to do it on a sector by sector basis. So right now there's so much work going on in deforestation. Well, we haven't fixed deforestation. There are a lot more investors and a lot more companies that are now publishing policies that say we will not do anything that results in net deforestation. This is a long way from doing everything we need to do to protect forests, but it is a major first step, and we need to make sure that everybody has that, and then try to restore nature or restore forests, and then move into every other biome. It's not easy.
Thanks. Is that good? Okay. Yeah.
Thanks for this very insightful discussion. I think we're having this very conversation here today because we're faced with a dilemma, right? So we won't be sitting here discussing like the cement industry's biodiversity footprint, right? Because that's like obvious, right? Every industry must be like assessed for their biodiversity footprint and need to manage it carefully, right? With like minimal impacts. But I think we're having this conversation here because of the renewable industry is like the industry that is being promoted, right, by basically another big process, the climate process. So I think we're really facing a different conversation here because we cannot just regulate it away, right? Say, okay, if like increasing the cost of regulation would kill those industries, then so be it, right? We won't be sitting here having that conversation. So I think my question is, for the panelists, are there any specific interventions that we need to make in sight of this dilemma that we're facing, right? We don't want to slow down the development of renewable energy or even like increasing its costs like significantly to undermine that other process that we're also very urgent about. So what specific interventions beyond, okay, better regulation, better environmental impact assessment for the industry and things like that, that we need to make, right, specifically targeting this dilemma, right, that we are talking about today? Thank you.
Okay, that's a difficult question in a certain way, but obviously need to have some inputs. Who want to, our panelists, who want to have a try? Yeah.
It's yeah. Yes, sorry. It's a very complex equilibrium that we need to achieve. You say we shouldn't regulate to a point where we stop the climate change or the energy transition. Well, I think over-regulation is bad, but I don't think we have an excuse to say because I want to fix climate change, I will just look away from problems with biodiversity or local community. No, that, I mean, there are certain minimum levels that we cannot, override. I mean, nature protection is critical. And if we try to fix climate change by destroying other parts of nature, that won't work. That would be bad. Would be bad, maybe not in the short term, but surely in the medium and long term. And so we have to do this energy transition, but we have to do it right. There's no excuse. And that's why I made a point earlier about regulatory environment and planning and I mean, it's the whole thing. We have to look at our countries or our society as a whole and understand what is it that we want to have for the future. And this might be maybe not popular, but we have to delay climate goals because we have to do things right. I will bet for delaying them a bit in a particular country because you have to do things right. Otherwise, you will find problems down the line. That's what I would say. I mean, it's very difficult, and each country has a different situation, socially, economically, and in nature. And there are no solutions one size fit all. And you have to understand the situation in your country, what's everything, and plan it everything. Make a proper long-term program development and fix regulation. This is well known. There are many countries in the world that are doing it. So go and learn from others. What worked, what didn't work, and do the best. Try to do the best.
Julian, you will be the third one. Libby will be the next. Hello. Julie, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Maybe I will ask Libby to answer, and then you will be the next.
Right. I agree with absolutely everything you've said there, Emilio, so I'm just going to build on that. I think what I would add to that in terms of, I don't know if we would call them interventions, but they are, because they're things that need to be taken seriously and happen. There's a big capacity building exercise, and I go back to government as well now, because if we are to have effective policy and regulation, then those responsible for creating and implementing it need to understand what they're trying to achieve. And I go back to my point about holistic decision making as well. That needs to be cross departments, not, we're talking about different departments here, aren't we? We're talking about departments that will be responsible for providing energy domestically and potentially to export. And then we're talking about a different department that is responsible for biodiversity, environmental issues. So there's a coming together there. And I think the finances at the moment seem not to stack up either. So we often have low returns, low margins on renewables that can potentially be used as perhaps a justifiable excuse for not not doing as what we would necessarily consider right by biodiversity, and that can't be the case if as a global society we're to take this transition seriously. We need to have the funding behind it as well to do it in the right way. Now, I'm not a financial expert, so it might be good that we turn to number 3.
Yeah, Julia, please. Yeah. We'll try again. Not loud enough.
Trying again?
Yeah, now it's good.
Right. So if there is a thing that's holding back renewables, right? At least in the United States right now, is not regulation. That's not. There are some places where there are local objections to things. We're well familiar with Cape Wind, when the people on Cape Cod didn't want to see wind turbines in the ocean. But these things, those are solvable at the community level if the developers work with the communities in creative ways, or, you can maybe find a different site. But right now, the things that are holding back renewables are the difficulty of siting and permitting, which in the United States takes forever, and interest rates. So I agree with both Libby and Amelia that doing things right requires, doing them with deliberation and thought and planning, and not just letting everything rip. And that's what I meant when I said, if you do anything at scale, you're going to have an environmental impact. So we're not going to be able to develop renewables to the extent that they can take over all of the electricity and energy needs that fossil fuels are fulfilling now with no environmental impact. So I think it is important to have the right regulatory safeguards to protect the environment in things like mining, the critical mineral supply for renewables, and to have those before we get to the point where we start depleting things or really damaging environments in ways that can have societal impacts. So we need both, the drive to install renewables, which I would argue we have now. There's still, we're still setting records every year in terms of renewable development. And we also need to have regulation that is friendly to renewables without being, so permissive that we incur all kinds of damages in the process, because then our children will just have to solve those.
Yeah, please.
Okay. It is obviously a good question because I guess many have the similar thoughts. I remember when I talked to a founder of climate change on the potential issues related to renewable energies, her answer was, no, we don't have time to consider anything else except for quick and dirty solutions to stop the warming up. So that worries me because exactly that kind of attitude gives green lights to me. Renewable energy development is a development, first of all, except it's there's a good cost to it, but if the cost of that good cost is too much, then it's not good cost. So there's always a balance. You have to understand what exactly the renewable energy involves, like the supply chain, like the mining, like the human rights issue, etc., etc. So not because we shouldn't just give the green light because it's a climate solution. Don't forget that the reason why we want to control the temperature is one important reason is to stabilize the ecosystem, which is the foundation for any living being to rely on. If renewable energy and climate solution destroys that foundation, it's not worthwhile. So there's always a trade-off and balancing and a calculation to it, to what point it's worthwhile and to what point it's not worthwhile. So that's a simple answer to that complicated question, but yeah, so it's not simple.
It's really a very challenging question. and the governments and a lot of organizations move forward. The next climate COP is just a few weeks away. And I know a lot more companies will go to that COP other than this COP. And that is where further kind of voice need to be heard. And a lot of action can take is to take the message to the people, to the companies, to the government. Tell them, slow down 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. Let's think about the trade-off. And for that, I actually want to open the floor to see for this question, when the renewable energy is a kind of green and want to move faster, and what kind of intervention we can have to really address the biodiversity issues, the footprint issues. Do you have any other suggestions or kind of thought or comment for this very, very actually good and a real question that we need to face?
I would like to see more governments and industry working together to facilitate it through good data, good evidence gathering and research, and good spatial planning. And potentially there's a need for some financial incentives if the margins are too small to be able to build out in the quality and the quantity that we need in the timeframes that we need.
Thanks. Great.
You know, I think it's really hard. I think, sure, you can set some areas for no-go and places that shouldn't be developed, but there needs to be a global effort to reduce consumption. And I don't see any action. You know, right now renewable energy is growing, and I think from the reports I've read, the amount of energy being produced is meeting marginal demand. It's not reducing the demand for fossil fuels. So we really have a long way to go. And so will it be a technological advance that comes along? Will consumption fall? Or will we, as humans, just continue the way we do things and until we have a more serious crisis, which is probably the more likely. But I don't want to be so pessimistic, but I think there really are those kinds of challenges that collectively we have trouble trying to come up with solutions, I think. So, but I think we can do some things that can actually help really protect nature, look at how we intensify land use, how we, as I was talking about before, figure out a way we can combine land use in terms of the types of energy. But at the same time, we have to really try to reduce that level of consumption so we can phase out some of that fossil fuel. I think that's the only way.
Oh, the question about... Sorry,
yeah, go ahead.
The question is reducing consumption voluntarily. I don't think it will happen. At one point, World Economic Forum asked questions around brainstorming on innovative solutions to global issues. And I actually gave a very provocative, impossible solution, which is quota. I mean, everyone consume, because resources limited on this earth, we cannot develop or consume endlessly. So I suggest an equal quota for everyone. Once, no matter rich and poor, everyone has equal quota. But if the poor people cannot consume as much, then you can sell it, trade it among people. But the cap is remained on how much one can consume every year. And of course, my suggestion was turned down because if this is market economy, we will have the freedom to, for individuals have freedom to do things, not to be regulated at that level of details. But I don't know if the margin, as you said, is too little. There's no margin. What if there's not much margin? We have to face that kind of choices, I guess. I can't think of otherwise.
Well, the energy sector is very complex. The situations you mentioned, I guess it depends on which part of the world you are. There are certain markets that are growing so heavily that they cannot cope with delivering renewable and thermal, and they just need more energy. And the developed countries might be in a different situation where energy consumption per capita is decoupling from growth a little bit. Electrification of the economy is another of the huge steps we need or paths we need to tread. That will reduce consumption a lot. It will require more energy, more electricity to be generated. There's a lot of R&D that we need. I mean, consumers is just part of the consumption. We have industry that we need to electrify or optimize in terms of decarbonization. And there's a lot of R&D that we need to do. R&D within the energy sector, like energy storage, that's paramount. There are some markets where renewable energy is hitting the limit because photovoltaics, for example, they all turn on at the same time. And once the sun goes, they all fall off at the same time. Wind is more stable in the sense that it can be day and night whenever wind blows. So there is very little margin in some places to put more photovoltaics because there's just too much. So that's where the margins fall, and you cannot do more because there's just no more capacity so it's very complex. But there is a lot of R&D, in multiple dimensions, like storage, like energy efficiency, like new vectors for energy distribution. All those are coming, and I think we also need to send some positive messages out to say we are doing a lot. Might not be working as quickly as we all would like, but we are doing a lot. And also technology is exponential, so maybe we don't see the right targets today with the technology we have, and maybe there are technologies coming that will speed up transition. Yeah, it's very complicated, but we have to consider different parts of the world with different requirements, different technologies that are coming to support. Of course, energy efficiency in the consumer, at homes, and those are very challenging because it's massive investments that we need. But technology is coming as well, heat pumps, and we have to keep a hope at the end of the line to see we are doing a lot. Again, that's a message I try to say always. We might not be in the right track yet, but at least we are doing a lot. Yes.
Yeah, I think Libby mentioned in your presentation another approach is the circular economics is another way to see the current consumption doesn't really make very efficient. So there's another way to do it or to add some approach. But on the other side, this is kind of, are we going to continue to fix a ship which already have a lot of holes, or we jump to totally another mechanism to look into? Maybe some people will agree more on the other side, not to just go following the same big, let's say, capitalism or something, but move to totally another one. But I think it's maybe too different from what we want to address today. But it's more point is this is really a fundamental question that we needed to ask every day to think about what we are really doing, and it's what is the trade-off, as every speaker mentioned is. Anyone else have the comments or any other questions you want to? Yeah, please.
I think so. All of this was like really amazing systemic kind of interventions that are hugely necessary. And just as an ecologist, I just wanted to bring it back to the site level. We need to integrate biodiversity into our developments through following the mitigation hierarchy in a really effective way. And there were some really interesting presentations earlier here. And just to plug, I'm Johnny Miller from WSP. We produced a guidebook on integrating biodiversity into renewable energy and grid distribution projects for the European market. For Euroelectric, and I'm sure there's other tools and guidance out there.
Great. Anything you want to exchange? Because this topic itself can be very wide and wide. But on the other side, I think to continue to have this conversation itself is one key intervention to keep. If I just want to encourage, do you have any last question? Well, through to the panelists here. Maybe not, because we already have. Yes, that's always. Just let me show the network itself. We know there's already a lot different platform, like what Birdlife International already have the big network. And also we know that IUCN and also FFI, a lot of organization, and the UN system has a lot platform. But I just want to say it's not always, that's not enough. We always can add one. The question is how to make all those networks connect with each other through different dots and make efficient. And the point is to reach out to all the individuals, for all the stakeholders. And I think that is what this network want to have. I think we want to have more conversation between the Chinese stakeholders and other stakeholders from other countries, and between break the ice from the companies, NGOs, academic groups, all try to talk together. Even we have different opinion and maybe totally opposite opinion, conversation itself is important. Sharing experience is important. And we should have more best practice to be collected and to be translated to the way that audience, the companies can listen to, the government can listen to. And this network will try to pick some of those suggestions to be the action for the next 12 to 2 years, and to make some small milestone on top of those big milestone. Every stone have its rules. So this is the form that you can leave your name, have your name and your email address, and we will follow up and set up maybe some newsletter or kind of email group to start to further facilitate some kind of discussion and reach out to you. And you can also reach out to us I think there's you can scan those quotas to connect to us, and let's keep this conversation. If so, say so, I think we'll go to the end of this event. And thanks so much for all the speakers, and thanks a lot for all the audience to bear with us. Thank you.